his game. Looking to rock and take his fame. Loves to drive that General Lee. Every Sunday with OMD. Step up, he's ready for a fight. Even when he has an open mic night. Boyness is here, so don't you sweat. Cause Bubba Duke and OMB are here to own this set. So sit back and enjoy tonight's best. Cause it's time to roar at Boar's Nest. Bubba Duke is here and plays his game. Looking to rock and take his fame. Loves to drive that General Lee. Every Sunday with OMD. Step up, he's ready for a fight. Even when he has an open mic night.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Sunday night. It is 8 p.m. It is time for the Boar's Nest. Bubba Duke is on assignment. I am OMD, and tonight, joined by my good friends Chris Best and Chris Parrish, we are having an open mic night with a focus on the NHL offseason. And we've got lots of, has already happened since, sadly, the Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup for the second year in a row. We've had lots of trades. We've got the NHL draft looming next week, and followed in another week and a couple of days by NHL free agency opening on Canada Day. How are we doing tonight, gentlemen?
Doing well. And I'm the Oilers fan here, and I'm going to say this. Yes, it's sad that they won, but they earned it. They deserved it. They were the better team, so I'm not upset. Despite the fact that I bought a replica cup that came on Game 7, or the day that Game 7 would have been on. That was awesome timing.
Right. They really were the better team, and they have actually shown in the last couple of years why they are in that elite category, and, you know, they are in a class of their own.
Yeah. But Best, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm just going over the NHL news because, honestly, I'm not familiar with what's going on in the offseason at this moment, but I'll offer my opinions where I can.
All right, well, let's start. We've already seen a couple of blockbuster trades, and let's start with Chris Kreider to Anaheim from the Rangers for a prospect and a pick.
Yeah, from what I understand, it's just a matter of moving people out, hoping to go in a different direction, and getting something back. I mean, I'm surprised that it was Anaheim of all teams, but I do think Anaheim had the cap room to take that full cap out with Kreider's deal. Like that. That's a big thing too, is when you see a player like that with a big cap hit, if there's no retained salary, then you know it's probably going to one of those teams that weren't exactly great the year before, and Anaheim really wasn't. But it's going to be interesting to see what Anaheim does. I wonder if Kreider's there to help re-energize guys like Zegras, who had a regress in his season.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. We know that Chris Kreider did have to waive his no-trade clause to go to Anaheim, and Anaheim was on his no-trade list.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that California state tax, or the lack thereof, might play a part in that.
It might, as well as now going to play with his former captain from the Rangers in Jacob Trouba as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to always wonder if that was something that was, if that was a conversation between the two. We all know players talk. We all know that teams necessarily can't always talk. That's tampering, but players talk. We know they do.
Yes, 100%. And then in another move, a player that both of us were really looking to potentially add to our lineup, Mason Marchment traded from Dallas to Seattle for a third and a fourth round pick.
I'm still trying to make heads or tails on this move. But I want to go back to the Chris Kreider talk since I didn't get to form my opinion on it.
Sorry.
as Parrish had said, this is definitely a move for the betterment of the New York Rangers, and maybe even for the betterment for Anaheim. Even though Anaheim was on Kreider's no trade list, I mean, players, I believe, can freely remove the teams and say, "Hey, I actually want to be traded to this team now."
I believe they can. I believe there's probably a lot of negotiation in that as well. I believe Kreider has 2 years left on his contract. So is this basically a move to say to Anaheim, okay, if we're not succeeding, can you move me before the deadline?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think too. This is kind of the time where you're going to see those trades because teams would like to kind of get some cap space, get some cap relief, move on from some of the potential areas of concern down the road right before the draft, before free agency, just so they have that flexibility to do something else. And if you want to go in that different direction, you got to do this stuff before because you just never know what may come in just the week before July 1, which is what we're about to have very soon. So it's going to be a very interesting next 10 days in the NHL.
Very much so. This Mason Marchment deal to Seattle, I believe, was a salary cap dump for Dallas.
Yeah, and just one last thing, you are right. 2 years at $6.5 million for Kreider. Yeah, the Mason Marchment one definitely is something that scratches my head on because I don't know why Dallas wants to get rid of them. I'm questioning a lot in the Dallas area right now because you obviously were aware of what happened with how they were eliminated. The pulling of Jade Onger really opened up some eyes down in Dallas. Then you had the firing of Pete Dubois, which I think was the wrong move. I really think they should have kept everything in-house and kind of minimize that issue a little bit more because I thought what they had was really good and they just got pushed off their game and were unable to collectively get back together in that series. And I understand the whole got to make a move because this is how many years do we hit this mark and not get over that hump? I completely get it. But then to go ahead and move one of your pieces that this is one of your better playoff guys. He is that kind of sandpaper guy in the lineup. It really was, it boggled my mind just because you don't have a lot of those guys on your lineup. And he was one of the better ones at it. So why move that? And then as an Oilers fan, I wonder how much this opens up a trade for guys like Evander Kane and other players who play those similar roles because now is Dallas saying, hey, we're just moving on from this player, but maybe we'll go get somebody else to fill that void. And
right.
At that time, I just don't get it because if you're going to move a guy just to bring in somebody the same thing, why didn't you just keep the guy you had to begin with?
Right.
I mean, would his stats in the playoffs be a contributing factor? Because I'm looking at it right now. In 18 games during the playoffs this year, he only had 1 goal, 4 assists.
Well, yeah, but I'm going to also add this in. Look at what look what a Jamie Benn did offensively. Look what Tyler Seguin did offensively. We all know that team revolved around the Mikko Rantanen line, not their quote unquote larger guys, but maybe they can't move the guys like Tyler Seguin. That's a pretty hefty contract to move, which a lot of teams might not take. I don't think they're moving away from Jamie Benn. I personally would. But at the same time, like it's one of those, is this how they're creating their cap? I don't know. But I do know that when it comes to playoffs, I'm not always looking at offensive stats per se. It's what are you doing that creates offense in the playoffs? Because sometimes that's just as important as actual stats.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because taking a look at what he did in the regular season, I mean, in 62 games, he had 22 goals, 25 assists for a grand total of 47 points. And I think that's actually telling of just how great of a player Mason Marchment actually is.
Yeah, and that's only one statistical number too. Like we don't get
Mhm.
stats for, oh, are you like, you know, we can look at his plus minus, we can look at his time on ice, how many 5-on-5 goals, like those advanced stats. So that has to all
Mhm.
come into play too. I think this is simply moving out a player because he does have a larger, maybe a larger hit. I believe it was what 4-5 or 4 around that aspect. But I'd have to also question if it's just a matter of, like I said, trying to do something different in Dallas and saying, hey, we got to make a change somewhere. And this happened to be one of those casualties.
Yeah, and
Right.
he also has 1 year currently remaining on his contract as well.
Yes. We do have Bubba coming in saying, good evening, boys. Good evening to you, Bubba. I hope you're having a blast at work. I think this is an intriguing move for Seattle to try and maybe boost their second line offense because we know that they didn't really produce a whole lot of offense this year.
No, and one of the big issues then was Jordan Eberle getting hurt midway through the season. And that
Mhm.
not only is their captain now, but that's somebody they focus on for that offense. And as you said, like with Seattle, they need to bring in some more options. Maybe they need that sandpaper to play with a guy like Matty Beniers to get him going. Maybe a Shane Wright also to get him more involved in that NHL game. So they do have some young guys, and I wonder too if, again, like best you said, 1 year left, 4.5. I wonder if maybe Dallas just couldn't find time, or they just didn't think getting an extension was proper for him. So they moved on from him, gained some assets, and decided to move on that way.
Yeah, and I'm going to flat out go ahead and say this, that so far it looks like Seattle may have won out in this deal. And I'm saying so far because the picks that they're trading, that could benefit Dallas down the road as well.
Yeah, in the short term, it really benefits Seattle. As Parrish alluded to, you get that sandpaper maybe to benefit a Matty Beniers. But Jared McCann had a step back in his offensive production.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get a lot of offense from the blue line this past year, even with Montour, Dunn, and all of those guys expected to really bolster that.
Yeah.
And their special teams struggled. So I wonder if that's where a guy like Marchment can come in, become that net front presence on the power play, or be that rock on defense and on the PK.
Yeah, just somebody to maybe add a little bit of traffic to get to the puck and gain more puck possession. That very well can be. I look at like Seattle. It's going to be an interesting thing to see what Seattle does, what direction they go, because they could make some moves defensively. I know LSCS, I believe, is a free agent this year. And I'm just looking at the Puckpedia thing, they only have 4 or 5 defensemen signed. So they could easily go grab someone. Oh, Alexiak has 1 year left. So yeah, like they might be able to make some moves on the defense side because they might be able to go out and get somebody like that. I'm looking at kind of what they have in terms of cap space right now, and they have just over 18.6 million. So they can do something. They could go and look at a potential Aaron Ekblad and say, "Hey, I know you probably rather stay in Florida, but would you come here for a couple mil more for
Right,
like a shorter deal?" I don't like who knows, but
right. And wouldn't Ekblad want to go and play with his former defensive partner in Brandon Montour?
yeah, but I just honestly can't see a lot of players out of Florida wanting to leave, seeing how they've been in the Stanley Cup Finals 3 years in a row now, winning the last 2. It's a hard one to sell, knowing that Sam Bennett is most likely going to stay there, taking a friendly contract. And when I mean team-friendly contract, it means he probably could get money on the open market, but he's deciding to take less to stay in the position he is, which is something a lot of players should do more instead of being greedy and trying to chase that golden ticket.
Right. Now, as we are looking, we've got the NHL draft coming up. Trying to find the date. I believe it actually begins Thursday evening this week.
Yeah, it's this week for sure. I do think we're seeing Thursday, then Friday, Saturday, or something, or maybe it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But
The first round is June 27th at 7 p.m. with rounds 2 through 7 on June 28th.
okay, so we're looking at Friday, June 27th, then, and then it finishes up on the Saturday. So Friday and Saturday are the days of the draft.
Okay. So I'm looking here. I've got the first round draft order, and really, there's a lot of teams that really early on are potential for moving those early picks. I think the only one that's safe to say is a lock is the Islanders at number 1.
Yeah, and I really think we're going to see San Jose stay at number 2. I don't think they're going to end up moving from number 2 unless they get one of the blow me away offers. But with that, it's hard to wonder what that is. So I'm not too sure if that's even possible because with the young team that San Jose have, they shouldn't be in a rush to go and try to win now when they have the youth that they do. They should honestly just keep rebuilding.
Best.
I'm actually with you guys on that one. I like that the Islanders have the number 1 pick. I'm very intrigued to see who the number 1 pick is because I can't find any information on who that is right now. San Jose, San Jose's been one of those teams that I've kind of rooted for because they're kind of like an underdog team to me. So to see them getting that number 2 spot makes me happy to see that as well, that they are actually building to the future. Because when they had guys like Joe Thornton and Brent Burns there, I rooted for them. I wanted to see them make it to the finals, and we never really got that when they were there.
Yeah, we got one Stanley Cup Finals appearance from them where they lost to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, Joe Thornton, Patrick Marleau, Logan Couture, who retired this past season. But now you've got that core with Will Smith, Macklin Celebrini. Trying to think of their young defense.
As you do that, though, guys like Matthew Schaefer and Michael Misa are guys that are looking at being the 1 and 2s in this draft. Michael Schaefer is a left-handed defenseman coming out of Erie. He's 6'2", 183, and that's what they have on paper. While Michael Misa is a center / left wing coming out of Saginaw. He is 6'1", 184. And I wanted to kind of get your guys' ideas on New York drafting a defenseman, as we know that somebody like a Noah Dobson is looking at getting a monster extension this year. I don't think it's the worst idea that they do that because it's always nice to have some young talent in on that D coming up. And once you hit those later years of Noah Dobson's contract, you might be looking at potentially moving away from him and having that developed defenseman playing with guys of a higher caliber is pretty important. But then if San Jose goes with a center or a winger, they could play that with a Macklin Celebrini.
They absolutely could. One of the things that I read just this afternoon, apparently Detroit has made a significant offer, but New York rejected it for Noah Dobson. And I just don't think it was enough. I think that Noah Dobson, I don't think he's going to get quite the monster extension that he believes he will. I do think it would be in the 5-year deal. I can't really see much more than about 6, maybe 6.5 million for him. But I do think that you need somebody to play behind Barzal as well.
You do, and I wonder if that's even something better suited to do in free agency than it is through the draft, because just because you're drafted doesn't mean you're a shoo-in to make the team.
Right.
So if you want somebody to play behind Barzell right now, I think your best look is at the free agency opposed to the draft. Now, if you're able to get that guy for the future, then you go and get him. Like, this is the thing where a lot of teams confuse what we need right now to what we should have and develop so we can have later. And I think that's a big flaw on your drafting strategy, because you shouldn't always like you. I'm not saying it's bad to think that way, but it's really sloppy because you just now all of a sudden lose focus on the future of your team because you have no idea who's going to really shape up down the road. You have no idea if somebody already in your system just happens to find its wings. Again, you're a Maple Leaf fan. We were talking about Mason Marchment. He had a slow progress, but once he started developing and getting in that system, he is somebody that you want in your top 6, top 9. He is going to be a staple to that team. Some guys take a little bit more time. So it's always nice to have a surplus, but it's always better to have depth and to have variety too. So you want to make sure if you have a top 5 pick, you do not mess up and you take the best guy that you possibly can have. You don't worry about if he's a fit now or if he's a fit later. You just take the best guy there, because if you're a top 5 guy with talent, you're going to play and you're only going to strengthen your roster.
And from a personal point of view, I mean, you mentioned Michael Misa and Matthew Schaefer being the number 1 and number 2. I personally got to watch these guys play in the OHL, and they were, on a personal note, they were a thorn in our team's side every time they played. And on a unbiased side, good for them. They friggin' deserve to be the number 1 and number 2, because they were phenomenal every time they came here to play.
Yeah, and an OMD, just to kind of give you a little bit of what San Jose has on their back end, they still have, and this is the concerning part, no one has a contract beyond next season. That is something to roll. Now, there are some RFAs. There's 2 RFAs, but your UFAs playing in the last year of their deal are Mark-Edward Vlasic, Mario Ferraro, Timothy Liljegren, someone you will know, Vincent Desharnais, somebody I know, and their 2 RFAs are Henry Thrun, and I have to hit his name. It's Shakira Mukhamadullin.
Okay. Oh, so they've got Shakir Mukhamadullin. Okay. I remember he was drafted by Jersey, I believe.
Yeah. And then they currently have Jan Ruda as a UFA. I don't see him re-signing. No. And then they have an RFA in Jack Thompson, who is a 23 right-handed shot defenseman. I do believe that they will qualify and get a deal with him. So that would add, a 7th defenseman? But I still think that a move can be done on that back end.
I do think that, I mean, Mario Ferraro's names has been linked to a number of teams over the past 2 years as part of a trade. Liljegren, I could see them re-signing him for that 2nd or 3rd pairing as that 4th, 5th defenseman. Mark-Edward Vlasic, who was one of my favorite defensemen for a long time, I think once he finishes up this year, and we didn't hear much from him this past season, I believe he retires.
Yeah, he's let's see how he is 38 years old. So yeah, most likely this is going to be his final year. He is going to make $7 million. So this is kind of the final big year for him. Now, is there a potential of, playing one more year with the lesser term? Absolutely. It's not really a thing now to say at a certain age you will retire. Jaromir Jagr is showing us that as we speak, right, as he is returning to pro hockey. But we're seeing more players kind of go into their 40s. I mean, Corey Perry,
right?
Anybody think he was one goal away from hitting 20 goals this season, being one of the Oilers' better consistent performers? I know I didn't. I know a lot of Oiler fans thought last year Hack contract was a little ridiculous given the fact we lost out and chose not to match on 2 RFAs and Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, and we kept Corey Perry at like almost $4 million. Then he ends up being what he ended up, and we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So who knows? But I mean, to your point, a defenseman, that's a little more rough on the body. You're playing more minutes. Yeah, most likely this is going to be the end, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah. Coming in at number 3 in the draft is Chicago, who they've got Connor Bedard, who I don't want to say he had a little bit of a regression, but just didn't have the season that was really expected of him. We heard his name really being kicked about as, does he sign an extension? Does he go to RFA status? They put TJ Brody on waivers for the purpose of a buyout. There's reports out there that they're going to buy out Tyler Bertuzzi. And they
Brody officially cleared today. Waivers, by the way.
And they just re-signed Ryan Donato, who was a fourth-line player who became their second-line center and their leading goal scorer this past season at a 4-year, $16 million contract.
Yeah, and on this site that I have, and that is kind of like a mock, it's just mynhldraft.com. They have a guy like Porter Martone coming out from Brampton, 6'3", 208. He's a right winger. That could make a lot of sense. But another guy that I like is who they have at number 4, and that's James Higgins coming out of Boston College at 5'11", 177. He's another center. And the reason why I like that is, yes, do you need somebody to play with Bedard? Absolutely. But what's the best duo in hockey right now? And I'm not saying this to brag.
No, you're looking at McDavid, Draisaitl.
And they're both centers.
Yeah.
So they can still play together. They could still manually be your 1-2 centers. And that's exactly how you want to run your lineup down, especially from the forwards. You want your centers, and then you want to build around them. So this could be the best way you go if you're Chicago, and you grab your 1 and 2 centers, and then you go that way. But at the same time, Porter Martone is a big body that could play a lot of dividends for Chicago.
Yes, and although I don't know Porter personally, I did go, believe it or not, I went to elementary school with his father.
Was his father a big boy?
Yeah.
Well, there you go. It's in the genes.
Yeah. And Porter's bigger than his dad.
Well, there you go.
But Chicago has, long been linked to a lot of these high-profile free agents, as well as really rumored to really be willing to move that number 3 overall pick. Do you see a blockbuster coming from Chicago to move that number 3?
If I'm Chicago, no, I wouldn't move that number 3. Why not get yourself a guy that's going to be a star in the future, or that could be a star in the future, I should say?
The only reason I would say yes is if you get a sign and trade for Kirill Kaprizov. If you can get a blockbuster talent like that, then absolutely no way am I giving up the 3rd overall pick. But if there are, and there are potential people out there. We talked about Kreider going out of New York. What we didn't talk about is the potential that New York could be moving other people. Like Mika Zibanejad or Artemi Panarin, who ironically came out of Chicago.
Yes, he did.
Could have returned back to Chicago, be in the cards. Who knows? He has that contract. He's going to get paid. He didn't say that he hated his time in Chicago.
No.
It would be completely different now. But at the same time, there's a goal scorer that you're putting on right beside Bedard, who again, is still perceived to be a generational talent. So
there are 2 other younger players as well that I am hearing, one being Alexei Lafreniere from New York. Would you make a move with that number 3 pick if it meant Lafreniere? or I'm going to go to a guy who slipped in the draft a couple of years ago from the prospective number 1 spot, and a Shane Wright.
I'm going to pass on Shane Wright. I think there's a reason why he dropped in the draft. And you haven't seen the redemption yet from him. In fact, you saw a lot of hesitation from Seattle on bringing him up right away. So something just didn't seem right with Shane, with the Seattle cracking on putting him on the opening day roster. Now, do they hate the player? No, but they know that he is going to take more time to develop. He could be, I don't want to say a bust, but a patient project. Go ahead, Bess.
I was going to say, and if I do remember correctly, I do remember Seattle saying Shane Wright's just not ready yet.
Yeah, and I don't know if Lafreniere is that guy. It really depends on how well you perceive the top 3 to 5 people in this draft.
Right.
If Chicago really, really likes a player at 3, then I don't think Lafreniere is the guy to take it away from you. I think you really need to be swept off your feet if you're moving 3. So that's going to be the hard one to answer. But again, that all goes towards Chicago. What are they really wanting to do in the next few years? That direction matters. And I don't know if Lafreniere is going to be that right person. He very well could be, but you have to make sure, because if you don't like what you have in the draft, then absolutely. But if you really don't know, go with the player. Go with that young player. And then you have the ability to be patient with it. And who knows, next year you might be able to get another top 5 pick and being able to use that.
Right. Another interesting team here is Utah coming in at number 4.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got a lot of the pieces. They are right there. They are on the cusp. They didn't debut Tidge Ginla this past season, so we know he's going to be coming up hopefully next season.
Mm-hmm.
Again, do you move him for that impact player now that could potentially get you into the playoffs? And I'm going to suggest, again, the Islanders for a Noah Dobson. I would even suggest, I just had the team too and I just lost it. Buffalo for a Bowen Byram.
I'll give you another one out of Buffalo. How about Owen Powers? There's been reports that Owen Powers might not be completely happy. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Those are just things that are coming out. I don't know if they're valid or not.
Right.
But, and I'm not going to speculate on if a guy's happy or not. I don't know. But if Owen Powers is available out of Buffalo and that price is that number 4 pick, I 100% am making that move, because I think Owen Powers is going to be a complete horse down the road for any team. And if Buffalo wants to be premature on that player, then you need to strike while the iron is getting heated.
Right.
So,
there was a lot of situations in Dallas or in Buffalo last season that led to Dylan Cousins being moved to Oshawa, that included potentially Rasmus Dahlin, their captain, going and asking out if Cousins wasn't moved.
to Oshawa?
To Ottawa.
There you go. You said Oshawa.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
So
I know you want to go back to 67, but let's not go back to that league.
But you are looking at, that team that's right there on the cusp of the playoffs with that good mix of veterans, with a guy like Lawson Krause, Barrett Hayton. You've got the up-and-comers like a Logan Cooley. A stable defense. You've got Jake Doan there now. And I think that this might be Utah's year if they move that pick and can get that 1 or 2 players.
Okay, but let's say they don't move that pick. Let's say they keep that pick. Who do you make a move for in the draft?
I think if he's still there, you've got to look at Porter Martone.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Provided Chicago, or if he's not taken with Chicago's pick, then again, I'm looking at again, one or two guys. I'm looking at either an Anton Frondell, who's a 6'1", 198-pound center left organ out of Ugandens in the it's not North American, or you're looking at a James Higgins, the center out of Boston College. Like, there
Yeah.
is no problem to having a insane amount of centers in your lineup. Centers are the sexiest position to be in the NHL, and if you have a vast majority of talent in that center position, you are going to probably collect on trades, and you're going to have so much more quote unquote trade gold in the NHL because finding good centermen in the NHL are a dime a dozen. You want those in your because they can do a lot more. So having the defenseman, and sometimes even having goalies are a huge plus for your trade block. So if I was Utah and that player comes to me, I'm taking him. Now, if Porter Tony comes in, 100%, you want that size. However, I'm going to go and look at you can probably address that size in other capacities, and you have some size in your lineup already. So go and get some of that skill down the center of your lineup, because why not? Like, it's just, if you can get it, do it.
Right. Next up on our draft order, the team that probably has one of the best center cores in the NHL, the team that made the biggest splash last year at free agency and struggled. And let's talk Nashville.
Yeah, what a crap start they had.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you from 2 seasons ago where the Oilers had a horrific start. They also had a monumental run that came after that helped kind of even it out.
Yeah.
Nashville didn't get anything like that, and it was a hard grave to climb out of. You have Steven Stamkos, you have Jonathan Marchessault. Jonathan Marchessault very well could be a trade bait this season or this off season, and I wouldn't throw it past Nashville to consider it. But if I'm Nashville, I'm looking at a defenseman here, and the reason is there's news coming out about Roman Josi, and he could be taking time off, and this very well could signal the end of Roman Josi. So if that's the case, I am making sure I'm grabbing a defensive prospect here, and the defenseman that I have is where is it? I'm looking right at it. I'm looking at Jackson Smith. But I don't think Jackson Smith is a guy that you should be grabbing at number 5. I think you can move down and grab him. So if I was the Nashville Predators and I'm looking at defense, and I need defense now, and I want to draft that to get back in our pool, then I'm trading down and I'm collecting something. And if you ask, oh, well, who are you going to draft? Or who do you trade down for? You can trade with the Anaheim Ducks. I'm sure the Anaheim Ducks would love to move back up. And I'm also looking at Detroit, who has the 13th overall pick. You're talking about how they have their eyes on moving up. Well, I think your trading partners right there in Nashville and Detroit for a potential move of Detroit moving up, Nashville going down, and I think you can go with a Jackson Smith, who is 6'3", 195. He's out of the Tri-City in the WHL. I think that's somebody you can do. But the one thing we know about Nashville is they like to look at the international pool, and they're very good with their international scouts, whether it's goalies, whether it's defensemen. They always seem to hit home runs. So teams, if you need some coaches, try to pluck them out of Nashville.
This is another. Sorry, Beth, go ahead.
And you were saying, like, Nashville just now, Nashville likes to look at the international market, and some of the prospects I'm looking at for Nashville on some of the websites I've been around, one of them, several of them are mentioning Roger McQueen from the Brandon Wheat Kings to come in to Nashville as well, despite the fact that he had an injury-plagued season last year. But I'm wondering if they're looking at what he has contributed overall to the Brandon Wheat Kings as opposed to just the one season.
Well, I think you have to look at everything overall. You can't just look at one season, because there have been players who have been injured and then come in and absolutely torn it up. At the same time, there were players who absolutely tore it up in their last couple of years in the OHL and never found their NHL footing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look at a Nick Robertson of the Leafs for that.
And one thing to also add with defensive prospects, if they're not ready to jump in the lineup right away, you have to be patient with their development, as they are the one position in the NHL that does take the longest to properly develop. It comes it comes right before goaltending, which is very specific and very much a hit or miss at times. But defensemen do take very long to make transitions into that amateur, that junior level to the pros. And because of that, you have to be very patient on that. So if that's where Nashville's going, then you might look at that player, because you don't know what his recovery is. You should be putting in that due diligence and knowing every little detail about his recovery, how he's coming back, when he is expected to come back in, how he's going to go. Does his mentality come in? Did he rehab properly or not? Or is he going to need more? Like, is this a recurring theme? All this stuff has to be wondered, and all this stuff has to be taken in consideration. And I know it will, because NHL goes so thorough with their investigation on player development.
Yeah.
But that's also kind of the form here. And I'm not saying even Jackson Smith is ready to play now. What I am saying is that I do think that is a great defenseman, that if he's the guy that you would want and you're looking at a defenseman, that should be, in my eyes, the first defenseman after the first two, because I do believe Matthew Schaefer is not going to be available there. If he is, boom, you grab him. But he's probably going number one in my eyes. So,
yeah.
And if that's the case, Jackson Smith, I think he's like probably the 15th, 17th range, unless a team goes up. And we always have to think there's a team that is going to just go, I don't want to say off the board, but they're like, hey, no, we just really like this player. You might put him at 10, but we like him at 5, and there you go. So you have to be very sure that you can grab him down there if you do make that trade.
Again, I'm going to suggest, could you see Nashville make that move for a Dobson or a Bowen Byram?
You really want to move Dobson, don't you?
I'm just thinking because of his situation. But Bowen Byram, we know, wants out of Buffalo. So you can do Buffalo with the 9th overall pick and Bowen Byram for the number 5 and a prospect, or, a 3rd round pick.
Yeah, and the thing is with Noah Dobson, though, so I'm looking at the Islanders right now. They do have 1, 2, 3. They have 5 defensemen contracted right now. In Ryan Pulak, Adam Pellich, Scott Mayfield, Adam Boquist, and Isaiah George. And their UFAs are Tony DeAngelo, Mike Riley. And their RFAs are Perunovich, Romanov, and Noah Dobson. I strongly think Noah Dobson is going to be given a qualifying offer, so nobody can really do that. I don't think anybody's going to offer sheet him. And I really say the reason why I don't think that is because I think I might take north of 11 mil, and then we're looking at potential 3 to 4 first round picks just to match this plus. That's a big ticket to pay for a player. And I don't know if a lot of teams want to say, we want to invest that much of our future on this one player. That's a heavy ask. And let's be honest, a lot of teams don't have their next first rounds that can also afford that $11 million cap hit. I'm looking at the Islanders on being able to get Noah Dobson under contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think like a couple of names there. Like I think Romanov, I think he may get an offer sheet and may go sign somewhere else.
Romanov, perhaps.
Unless you don't qualify.
Yeah, and that's going to be the thing, because if you're not qualified as an RFA, you become a UFA.
Yes.
So that's kind of how it goes. And if that's the case, he doesn't get qualified. One, I think it's a mistake by the team. But two, I also think there's going to be a lineup for teams to have him because I don't think Romanov is making anything over 5 unless he hits the open market. And there's a team that's struggling to add to their blue line. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but when I play the video games, I always qualify my guys and I look at moves later. So I always make sure that I'm in the driver's seat of all these things. And I do think with young defensemen that are that close to really moving to that next level, I think that's exactly what you have to do. It's why if you ask me, why didn't the Oilers do it last year with Broberg? Well, I think they should have. I would have. But I also know that player asked for a trade on multiple occasions. There was probably not a want of keeping a guy in, knowing that he didn't want to be here.
Right. Up next. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Best.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think about when I think about these NHL drafts. And there's a lot of people who don't, I guess you could say, don't quite understand the draft, but they always expect the next Sid the Kid. You can't expect that every year because you're not going to get a Sid the Kid every year.
No, I mean, if you look at the last 5 generational talents, Crosby, Ovi, McDavid, Matthews, and Tavares were the last 5 that were considered generational talents.
Connor McDavid, too.
A guy like Nathan McKinnon really grew into his role and became that talent. And that's, I think, what you want more is that growth, that development, as opposed to just this guy is this and has been, because that's a fluke that you're.
Yeah, like you're not going to get a superstar right out of the gate. The draft is about building to the future, essentially.
Well, and next year's draft, you're going to get somebody in McKenna who is going to be that quote unquote could be generational talent. So that's kind of the draft anyway. So if you can't get your guy this year and you honestly don't think your team is going to be a playoff team and you could be on that, we're in year 2 of a rebuild. And that's exactly why I look at San Jose as being that perfect team of saying, look, don't go after these guys just to be competitive and try to make a playoffs. Stay on schedule in what you're trying to do. Because if you're able to have a good year and get some in-house experience with your young guys this year, just imagine what you'll be in 5 to 6 years when other players do want to come and play with those types of talents, because they're going to be the attractions that should be bringing in that, as well as your team having those winning ways.
And that's how I'm kind of viewing what Montreal is doing right now. I mean, like, I had them written off halfway through the season, but then they turned it around and surprised me and made it to the playoffs.
Montreal was definitely a surprise, and I applaud them for what they did and how they've built their team. Yes, you are getting that. A Toronto fan is giving Montreal a ton of credit.
I give you guys credit too. So
yeah, but they've done it the right way. I do think that Montreal's greatest strength is their grit, because they've got 12 guys on the forward crew that are not afraid to go into the corners and bang and hit, as opposed to getting all the finesse.
And that's what I've been saying for years, is that they need that grit, and it's finally starting to show. The thing is, when it comes to Montreal, and I'm going to say the same thing for Toronto and the same thing for Nashville, the pieces are there. It's just a matter of putting it all together.
Yeah. But also staying on Nashville by chance, if they were to stay at 5 and that Anton Frundell stays on the board, I think that would be a guy I'm picking. Especially if you don't want to go defense at that time. But yeah, there's that guy, and then you also have to look at even a Caleb Desnoyers. I think it's Desnoyers from the Quebec Major Junior, so I'm expecting an accent on the name. He is a center coming out of Moncton. He's 6'2", 170 198. That could be somebody that you have kept down just to kind of bulk up a little bit. 6'2", that's a good frame. You can be a 195, at least a 185 to 195, and I'd be okay with that. You can almost even be a little bit bigger. But I'm looking at Frondell. He's 6'1", he's 198 already. So,
yeah, he's a big boy.
Kind of looking there. And you're coming out of the International League, and we're talking Nashville, so could be a match made in heaven there.
Yeah. Coming in at number 6 for the draft, we have the Philadelphia Flyers, who were a complete disaster last year under Tortorella.
Yeah.
And in that case, I do blame the coach.
Well, Torch has been known to be a bit of a hothead, so.
Yes, I mean, he had his issues with Michkov, didn't like any of his goaltenders, and would openly bash his team.
I mean, does anybody ever like Philadelphia goaltenders? They seem to be thrown under the bus all the time. For a team that used to have some great goaltending back in the day, they almost are their team that struggles. And when they finally do get somebody, something happens to where they're removed from the team. So it really seems like Philadelphia needs to also address goaltending at some place. But you talked about Roger McQueen earlier. Yes. This seems like a Philadelphia Flyer type of guy.
Yeah.
He is a centerman. He is 6'5". He is 200 pounds. He is coming out of the WHL in Brandon. This seems like a fit in Philadelphia.
And from some of the footage, because I've seen the guy's footage in the past, he is not afraid to mix it up. So that's where the Broad Street Bullies of the Flyers come into play there.
I mean, you look at what a power forward could be, and you kind of look, hey, this guy can play kind of that Eric Lindros-esque type game.
Yeah.
And who better to know what that game is than a Philadelphia?
Yes. One of the prospects that I am excited for that Philadelphia has is a guy that I really did not want the Leafs to give up at the draft, and that is a player by the name of Nikita Grabenkin.
Mm-hmm.
Came in, he only played 3 or 4 games with the Leafs, had 1 assist, but he was the guy. I think he had a fight, a penalty, or fight, an assist, and all of that, and he went into the corners, he was delivering bone crushers. And his big comment of forecheck, backcheck, paycheck really just ingrained himself, and he was a guy I would have loved to see him make that step up to Toronto and play on the 3rd or 4th line next year, because they had him playing with Ryan Reeves. Now, he's the guy that would have moved Reeves right out of Toronto. Do we see Philly? I don't see Philly really moving on from the number 6 pick. I think this is something that they really need, and maybe to try and build up a Michkov, or I'm not even sure. I think their goaltender's name is Urson.
They have Samuel Urson, but they also have Ivan Fedotov. Fedotov, I don't know the pronunciation of it, but
right.
That seems to be their number 1 right now. And that's the thing. Like, we talked about Jake Allen's name being out there. I think Jake Allen would be a great fit in Philadelphia, to be quite honest. I do think somebody's going to offer You'll Hoffer out of St. Louis. I wouldn't be shocked if Philadelphia does that. They seem like the balls to the wall type team still. But
well, when it comes to Jake Allen, the Flyers were on that list of people who are interested, as well as the Oilers.
So I think that could be there. You also have a potential, like there are some goalies on the free agent scene too. So I wouldn't be surprised. I know Gibson's name has been floated on there. I honestly think Gibson could be a fit in Philadelphia. Whether or not that's where you'd want to go, that remains to be seen. But as we kind of select more to their draft and kind of their pick, I do like that player that we talked about, Roger McQueen. I think that makes a lot of sense. But if they don't go that route and they want to grab somebody else, I look at Raheem Murdoch coming out of Trinidad of the Czech League. He is 6'6", 207. He's a right-handed defenseman. It's another big body. They like big defensemen as well.
Okay. Let's go to perhaps the biggest fall from grace coming in at number 7 in the draft, and that is the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
For years, such a dominant team. And then this year, they just bottomed out. And I think part of it is because Swayman was used to being in a tandem with Linus Ullmark and not being the true number one. And Eunice Corpusalo wasn't enough to come in and do that to be a backup. I think they needed to go that tandem route. And now you looked at this team, trade off Brandon Carlo to Toronto for Fraser Minton in a first. Brad Marchand traded to Florida. And look what he did there.
Yeah. I 100% think the Edmonton Oilers are a great trade partner for Boston Bruins on the goalie front. Why? Because I think both Edmonton Oilers goalies work better in a tandem as well. Mm-hmm. Whether you want to grab Stuart Skinner or Cam Pickard, one of the two would fill in beautifully in Boston to be that backup or that pairing for Swayman. And I don't know if Swayman is really the guy you want for a 1A. And honestly, he's not a guy I'm targeting. And the reason is, if I'm looking at a goalie who is better in a tandem, why not just stay with what I have? Because they clearly also work in a tandem, and they're costing me less together than what Swayman would individually.
Right.
So it makes... I don't know if that's really the way I want to go. But with Boston is considered, I think clearly they need to do something to help Swayman. If they think Swayman is not their answer, then, they got to make something happen. But I'm looking at an Ilya Samsonov, who is going to be a free agent, as a potential fit in Boston as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know. But when it comes to their draft, though, I like the center coming out of Brantford, 6'2", 172, Jake O'Brien. I think that makes a lot of sense. He really seems like he is that. If you remember the year where they had the 3 draft picks in a row, he seems like that's the player, because those 3 draft picks made zero sense when you looked at their logical aspect. But when I look back on when they drafted Tyler Seguin, I kind of can see that with Jake O'Brien just a little bit.
Right.
I think Boston knew they made a mistake moving on from Seguin at an early stage. However, I think they had to. They were in a position where they just needed to do so. But Jake O'Brien, I like. It's a passion project. I don't think he's a guy that's going to play on their lineup next season, but it's a guy that in a couple of years will. So I'm going to go there. He's a center, and I think that's exactly the right move for Boston.
I tend to agree with you there, Parrish, but I'm going to be a little bit on the bias side here for a little bit here, because I know that right now it seems like they're building the team around obviously Pasternak and Charlie McAvoy. I almost said David McAvoy for some reason. I'm looking at like their second line, and I'm looking at their depth of their depth. I'm looking at them adding depth to their forwards, and I'm thinking our local boy from the Sioux Greyhounds, Brady Martin, could very well be that guy to be that second centerman there, even if he plays as a winger, because the dude can skate. He can put goals in the net. He is fantastic on that ice. I think Brady Martin could very well be a good fit there.
Right. And this is where I'm going to bring in and introduce a name like a Shane Wright.
No doubt.
Or even a potential Alexei Lafreniere if they are being shopped if those names do come up.
Again, I go back to New York and I look at Panarin. I think Panarin would be a great fit for Boston. We also you talked about Pasternak and McAvoy being the leading piece. Let's not forget the Elias Lindholms of Boston, who is a huge piece to that place. He can play center and the wing. You also have Cale Middlestat, who also can play center and the wing. They have who's that? Pavel Zutka also, Mark Costello, and Matthew Poitras. They're all center / wingers. So they look like they like that versatility. So if they have all this versatility in their suit, then maybe they want somebody that just plays the one position. That's it. I also wouldn't think twice about them grabbing one of those defensemen either, whether it's at Murbata or even at Jackson Smith. That's also something too. Boston also likes those big players, but they also like those smaller skilled ones as well. So they're a team that I think can go off the map here and might just do that.
Okay. Another name that I'm going to put out there for Boston to potentially trade for, and it would feature this pick at number 7. Boston making it an offer to Calgary for Rasmus Anderson.
Okay.
He's got the history, having played with both Nikita Zadorov and, of course, Elias Lindholm.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big body defenseman, and he can score. You've now got McAvoy Anderson as your top pairing.
Another name I would look at, and I think you got to look at what he did this year in Edmonton, is John Klingberg.
Mm-hmm.
If the others don't re-sign him, which I don't know if they will, Sam Moment did say he does not plan on making many changes on the defense this offseason. So maybe that includes keeping what he has.
Right.
But if he hits the free agent market, which I do think he will, if I'm Boston, I'm looking at a 1 or 2 year deal for him to help kind of that next group, because he can really benefit being a 5'6" defenseman on a team, especially a team that wants to bring in some of their youth. So that's going to be something to note. I do like your Rasmus Anderson thing. I also say this. If he doesn't go to Minnesota, Brock Besser makes sense in Boston.
Yes, 100%.
So I look at Boston and Minnesota being a landing spot for him. And I'd be to me, they're the ones that, again, I said off the map or off the board. I think they'll go off the map in free agency as well. Boston's one of those teams that just somehow they shoot for the stars on a lot of things. But also, I'll say this, that Frundell player that we talked earlier about, if somehow he falls, I think Boston loves him, because somehow they also love these international guys as well.
Yes.
I look at like Anton Lundell as being somebody that I know he's on Florida, but I also know Boston has always liked that player as well. They have a tendency of always grabbing some international players as well. I think Frundell could be an option for them if he's there.
Up next, our next team here is a team that really struggled in all aspects of the game last year. They've made one move to start improving with Mason Marchment. We are talking about the Seattle Kraken.
What's cracking, Seattle? Best you mentioned him. I think this is exactly the right spot for a Brady Martin.
Again, I wouldn't be too opposed to it. I mean, and I think you and I, Parrish, talked about this some years ago with the Kraken when they were coming into the league. This would be a great place for a guy like Brady Martin to build his star upon and maybe become that top guy instead of being, the second centerman there.
Yeah. Another name that I do like for them is Victor Eklund. He comes out of the Jurgen's Den. It's the same area as Anton Frendel. I believe they're teammates there. He's 5'11", 161. He is a winger. He is something that could be a passion project as well. We know that they do like to kind of put people in their developmental and have kind of in that system. He seems like he could be somebody that may take another year or two to play out of the country before coming over, and I think that'd be okay. I don't think Seattle's in a need for drafting people to play right away. I think they are more than willing of going through free agency, picking up guys on a 1 or 2 year deal, and then going with that.
Okay, and see, I was going to suggest one name that I think would be prime for Seattle, not necessarily in the draft, but in free agency, and that is Mitch Marner.
Yeah, I also wouldn't hate them going after Brad Marchand either.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I like if Brad Marchand does not re-sign with Florida, does test the open market, I think there's a laundry list of suitors that are willing to go after that. I know you said Marner. I'll go with another Maple Leaf. What about John Tavares? What about just grabbing a guy for a couple years to kind of just give a little bit of mentorship to your younger players like a Matty Beniers, like a Will Smith, like a Shane Wright?
Oh, absolutely.
And just using that veteranness, because we saw what they did when they first started and they brought in a former Flames captain in Mark Giordano.
Yes.
It wouldn't surprise me if they go that route at all.
Not at all.
The more I'm thinking about the Brady Martin thing, the more I'm realizing Ron Francis is still one of the managers in Seattle, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Ron Francis likes to take Greyhounds, so yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think there's two other players that you need to look at, and one would be another trade with Dallas with another name that is rumored to be on the block in Jason Robertson.
Yes, but this also came out earlier today, that Dallas is not shopping him.
No.
That is a misconception going around. What they are doing are listening.
Yes.
And if things don't work it sounds like if things don't go accordingly in the draft, then they will tail back to those offers that they have and see if there's interest still. I do believe Dallas is going to go through the draft and not trade Robertson. I think Robertson actually will start the year in Dallas. I think he's probably going to be a during the season acquisition for a team, but I definitely do think we're going to see Robertson most likely stay in Dallas. But if he does get moved before, I think it's definitely after the draft, because again, I don't know at that point if that pick alone is enough for a team that says, yes, I'm going to move this player.
Right. That's...
I'm with Parrish on this one, 100% on everything there. I got no argument against it.
I do have a feeling that come this season, regardless of where Jason Robertson ends up playing, I do believe his brother Nick is going to be with him, whether he's traded from Toronto to Dallas for that third or fourth round pick that they just acquired, or he's signed as an RFA.
Yeah. Another name that I do like for Seattle, and that is very close to them, coming out of Everett, is Carter Bear, the 6-foot center, weighs 179. He does seem like he has a frame. If you're 6 feet and you're already 180, chances are you're going to be lean to a little bit of muscle there. There is some room to kind of build there, but not much. So you do know that you're going to be close to that for your starting. Anyway, he could be somebody that could very well be very liked by Seattle as well. Again, coming out of Everett, they're probably they probably know the player very well by this point.
Right. does Seattle have anybody on their current roster that you would see them moving out? Like, we know that Jordan Eberle's the captain. I don't see him being moved, but they had issues with Jaden Schwartz's production dropped off. Jared McCann's production dropped off last year. Do we see them potentially being moved out to try and improve the roster that way, whether it's through prospects or picks?
I think they could trade Alexiak with 1 year remaining on his contract. I think that could be the move that you can look at. Now, would they? I'm not too sure. But he does come in at 4.6, and if he's not somebody that you can extend right now, and you don't feel comfortable about waiting, that's definitely somebody can move. Having 1 year left in their contract is very more plausible for teams to want. Alexiak could be a match made for Nashville, who could be in need for a defenseman who could play right now. I could foresee that move. I do think Shane Wright could be a guy that you move. I really do. I just have a fear that he's not going to get you the return that you would want out of a former kind of top 10 pick. I just don't think he is that anymore. I think the perception of Shane Wright on draft day really showcased kind of everything about him. We all remember the football movie Draft Day and how that kind of was a silly movie to begin with, but we also saw not going number one and seeing how when a player falls, how they react.
Right.
And Shane Wright now has been in the system for a few years, and I don't think he is going to be what that pick represented. So I do think a lot of people have him as a project piece that has upside, but whether or not he hits it remains to be seen. And we've seen a lot of players come and go. For an Oilers fan, Nail Yakupov just blows to my top of my thoughts right now. And then really, so does Jesse Puljujärvi, to be quite honest with me.
Coming in at number 9 on the draft board is the Buffalo Sabres, who showed so much promise 2 years ago and then really regressed last year.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you first off, if he's still there, Roger McQueen will be a Buffalo Sabre. I think that's a big one. But then I also look at Radim Murta. And the reason why I go there, 6'6", 200-pound defenseman. If you're going to move Owen Power, you're going to want to replace that that in a prospect form. So why not do that? It's never a bad thing to have really big defensemen, especially if it's a top 10 pick. There's some expectation. There's a reason why they're a top 10 anyway. I wouldn't hate if Buffalo goes that route. So if my eyes, I'm looking at both Murta, I'm looking at McQueen. If those players aren't there and Victor Eklund is, I'm going with Victor Eklund. I think this player is going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah. I believe Victor Eklund's brother, actually, William, is a member of San Jose's roster.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see him going very early in the draft as well to get that opportunity to play with his brother if it's...
They're not taking him at 2, man. They're not taking him at 2. You're and I don't see San Jose moving up at all. That could be a pipe dream. The only way you get that is if San Jose decides they want to acquire another pick. But what are you going to give up to do that? They do have, if I'm looking at, they do have the 30th pick right now in this draft. That would have to be part of it, plus another first round, plus a prospect just to get to that. Because you're going to need a top 12, top 13 to get that player. That's a hefty price to pay.
Right. Now, we do know that Bowen Byram wants out of Buffalo. But really, their big issue, as it always has been really depth, and they get stuck in their own heads.
Yep. And that's why I bring up the defenseman. Because if you have 2 defensemen already in your system or on your team that could be moved, why not restock that with prospect? So I think grabbing a defenseman here allows you an opportunity to make a move, because at least now you've stockpiled assets to allow you to have some comfortability in your system
Right.
at the very least. And that's just the thing. You have to find, I think, to me, it all depends on what they do with these two defensemen and if they bring one back in a trade.
Right.
And if you trade Boar and Byram and you trade Owen Power, do you bring a defenseman back? And I say this because I look at free agency and I look at Gavrikov as being a primary target. If I can get a sign and trade for a couple of years for Gavrikov, and I can do that, I'm going to do it because I really like the player. I really like the defenseman, and I think he can be a leader in your locker room to help out with the young core that you want to have.
Mhm.
So it really, you really have to be smart with the next moves you do in Buffalo, because you're either one move away from having a complete dumpster fire, or you're one move away from getting back on track and being in the right direction. I don't fathom the position the Buffalo general manager is in right now.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a prospect that even Yahoo's taking a look at here. They're looking at a guy like Jake O'Brien if they're looking for a centerman here for the number 9 pick. He's an 18-year-old guy, Toronto native. In his first year in the OHL, he was averaging about a point a game. This past season, though, he racked up 98 points total, 32 goals, 66 assists in 66 games, and 11 points in the OHL playoffs. This guy could be a top piece for Buffalo if they do things right with him.
Right. I think one of the other issues in Buffalo is their goaltending. Uso Puka Luukkonen, I don't think is worth the money they paid him. He's a decent goalie, but you have that young prospect in Devin Levi who should be your goalie of the future, and you were wishy-washy with him. You had him and Reimer rotating between Rochester and Buffalo.
Yeah, those are moves I didn't get.
I think there's probably a wanting to make sure Levi gets the proper reps. I don't think Buffalo was comfortable making him the number 1 starter this year. And because of that, I didn't think they wanted him riding the bench all year either. They wanted him to play because they know how good he is. I do think that this was a developmental year of, hey, we got to bring you back and down. And the reason is we want you to get the playing time in, but we also want you to be here with the main club. We want you to get affiliated with how we do things on the NHL level. I do think either this or next season we will see Devin Levi be that number 1 guy in Buffalo. I think you have to get the proper veteran to go alongside with him. That is where I think, hey, if Jake Allen is there, I think he could be a great mentor for him. The only problem is Jake Allen is still in a play now mode. That would be the only thing. So you really have to find who is the best player for him. I'll give you another name, Calvin Pickard. He is a guy that can play there and do the job if you cannot do that. But he's also a guy who's a very good support system. I saw this firsthand here. I'm not saying this because I want to get rid of the guy. I just know a goaltender change is happening in Edmonton, and I see him as the one out. So because of that, if I'm Buffalo, I'm moving on from that, and I'm bringing in Pickard as kind of your 1B to Devin Levi's 1A, and I'm riding with that, and I'm allowing them to get that experience.
Right. I was going to suggest, too, I mean, on a 1 or 2 year deal, you've got John Gibson in Anaheim who could come in and be that mentor.
But here's the thing with Gibson. On the trade deadline, he rejected a trade to Edmonton because he, quote unquote, didn't want to share the crease with somebody else. He didn't want to share the crease with Stuart Skinner. Now, that was a big rumor that now there wasn't official evidence of him saying that, but there was multiple sources that said that came out.
Right.
To the point where if that was the truth, I can't see him going to Buffalo when Buffalo says, we want you to just kind of be that guy. This is
Right.
this screams Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love to me.
Yeah.
To where we like Green Bay knew they were going to go to him, but Aaron Rodgers still wants to play. And this is where it would be if Calvin Pickard and Devin Levi were in the same locker room. I think there's a lot of that's creating a situation that you don't want. It's why I go towards more of a Calvin Pickard, who knows he's not a number one goalie, and he knows that he is going to be that secondary piece in the crease. So I would go that route. I would do something like that. I'm giving him as an example, but that's exactly the goalie I would pick for Devin Levi, because he's a great leader. He's a great guy to have in the locker room. He definitely would help out with Devin Levi and kind of be that mentor for him. And he's also a good cap hit, and he's also someone that if you need to rely on him, he'll do his job.
See, another goalie name that I would put in there is Connor Ingram out of Utah.
Now, I got to ask, though, are you bringing him? What role are you bringing him for?
I'm bringing him in to be that, do a platoon, 1A, 1B with a Levi.
So you want to create a situation like Boston had with Swim and Elmar?
Yeah.
Is what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, you do.
And I think like where I'm coming from, I think I know I want Levi to be my number one, and I want to try to bring like, how do I get him to be that number one?
Right. And this way, like, because you've got Ingram, who I believe only has a year left, I honestly expected Utah to move Karl Vejmelka last year. And they re-signed him to that 5-year deal. So I think now that you've got Connor Ingram, who I believe has this year left, he may already be a free agent.
I'm going to be pulling up the free agents right now with goalies, so bear with me for a little bit. Devin Levi, by the way, is an RFA going into this season, so we got to put that in consideration. Another guy I think could very well be that. What about a Tristan Jarry out of Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
I do see Pittsburgh wanting to move away from him, and he very well could be that 1B. So these are kind of the top end names for free agent goalies.
Okay.
For UFAs, you have Cal Peterson, formerly of Philadelphia, Robert Leonard, formerly of Vegas, Ville Husso out of Anaheim, Jake Allen, formerly of the Devils, Alexander Yurjev, formerly of the San Jose Sharks, who did get traded there, played very well in his time in San Jose, by the way, but then also told the team he had no plans of staying. Vitek Venasek coming out of Florida. I personally think he's going to re-sign with Florida. You have Anton Forsberg, formerly out of Ottawa. You have Daniel Vladar coming out of Calgary. Ilya Samsonov out of Vegas. David Rittich out of LA. Capo Kakkonen coming out of Florida as well. And then you have James Reimer, obviously, who I don't think turns unless he is going to stay as that mentorship role. But your RFAs are Devin Levi, Daniel Tarasov coming out of Columbus, Arvid Soderblom out of Chicago, and Georgi Romanov coming out of RFA. Those kind of are your top goalies.
Okay. So, yeah, it's a really, really narrow crop.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, like, again, I do circle around Edmonton a little bit.
Right.
And Edmonton and Buffalo have some history on trading, as we all know last year. The Ryan McLeod for Matt Savoy, which thank you, Buffalo, very much. But again, this very well could be a thing where Pickard gets moved. Get like a 4th or a 5th round pick. I'd call it even. There you go. You have it.
Yeah. And coming in at number 10 on the draft list, the Anaheim Ducks.
Yeah. This is one where, again, I think the last 3 to 4 names, if they're available, whether it's McQueen, Brady Martin, maybe even Jacob Ryan if he's there, makes sense. Radim Murta, I do think. Jackson Smith, I also think could be a valid option for them. One of those names I think works well with Anaheim. If I was Anaheim, though, and I look at the direction they're going with their trade with Chris Kreider, I wouldn't be surprised if Anaheim moves this pick to gain another player that could play right now with the team. I could also see this be a pick that gets tied with Gibson as a way to get a team to take on Gibson.
Yeah.
I could see this. I can see them really. I see them keeping this pick because I see them moving on from Trevor Zegras.
That could very well be another reason. That player very well could use a change in scenery. And I think a lot of teams looking for depth and looking for if they want a younger player who, honestly, if Anaheim retains some salary, makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams upper in that cap role that need some better contracts on their team.
I am looking at Montreal as a fit for Zegras. One, you do have his childhood best friend in Cole Caulfield. You've got Patrick Laine, who, yes, he is sporadic. Hopefully he has a better season this year than he wound up having last season, being on and off the injury list. But then I'm looking at a player like a Brendan Gallagher, who he can go and provide that extra support to. Another fit that I do see for Zegras as well would be a team like Utah, where he can go and provide some stability again behind a Logan Cooley. He doesn't have to go in there and become that new face of the franchise.
Yeah. When I look at Zegras, though, I don't know why, but this player screams like he should be on the Columbus Blue Jackets to me.
I honestly thought he was there for a while for a time.
Right? Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, or no, sorry, Leo's with Anaheim, but Adam Fantilli, Kent Johnson, yeah, 100%, I'm with you.
But I do know that Cole Caulfield has been angling to try and get Trevor in Montreal.
Yeah. And if I'm looking at Columbus's roster right now, actually, if I'm even looking at the draft board right now and seeing where their pick is, and they have pick, I believe they have 14 and 20. So they have 2 first-round picks there. If you were to package up, say, pick 14 or 20, and you were to add maybe an RFA coming in and maybe a player on the roster, and I'm looking at maybe I don't have a name. Maybe a Zach Aston Reese. Would you look into that?
I don't think for a Zach Aston Reese. I think there's one other name that, again, long been linked to being moved out of Columbus. Their longest tenured player in Boone Jenner.
The only thing with, Boone Jenner 3.75 for one more year. Yeah. If you retain some salary, I could see that being an option. And the reason why I say that is we live in a cap era. That stuff always matters, especially if you do it before free agency. So Yeah, and it's for 1 year, so I could see that, but I wouldn't be surprised if Columbus makes an offer for Tyler Zegras or Trevor Zegras. Sorry.
Okay. Best, your thoughts?
No, it wouldn't surprise me if Columbus makes that move too, because now that I'm leaning more into it, it does seem like it's either Montreal or Columbus. And when I think of those two teams, I think of like speed and scoring, and that's where Trevor Zegras comes into play.
I will also put this out there: two teams that also have multiple picks in this round. Chicago does, Calgary does, and so does the Montreal Canadiens. Actually, so does Philadelphia Flyers. Actually, so actually, and so does the Nashville Predators. So,
Yep.
I look at teams that have multiple first round picks this year that could be destinations for Trevor Zegras if he's moved. Because I do think at least a first round, and I think a later first round pick plus a prospect plus a player on your roster right now might be enough to get it to do that.
So, guys, we have covered the first 10 picks of the first round for the NHL draft. Let's talk some free agency now. And I mean, it's a very, very weak class with the exception of a few massive names. Obviously, it's headlined by Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and Sam Bennett.
And Brad Marchand, I would say. The guy who finished number 2 in Conn Smythe voting.
So who do we see moving? Who do we see re-signing?
Sam Bennett, I'd say resigning. He pretty much all but confirmed that is what's going to happen. I'm already hearing a potential 8-year, $7 million contract for him, which, given what he probably could make on the open market, you're probably looking at closer to 9.5. That's something that is expected on July 1 is overpayment and probably contracts that are a little bit more. I think the belief out of any Florida free agent right now, they just won a Stanley Cup. For some, they just won a second consecutive Stanley Cup. And for some of them, they just played their third consecutive Stanley Cup final.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a belief in this team and the belief in what they're doing. In my eyes, you have one of the best coaches of all time in Paul Maurice. You have a core group that is second to none. Barkov could be, in my eyes, one of the best captains in the NHL.
Yeah.
And then when you look, you have a core group that consists of Sam Bennett, Sam Reinhart, you have Matthew Tkachuk, you also have guys like Aaron Ekblad and Forsling on the defense with Bobrovsky and net. Why fix what's not broken? I think the two people that will stay in Florida, Aaron Ekblad and Sam Bennett. I think if anybody, Brad Marchand just comes out as one of the best rentals a team could possibly have. And I wouldn't even rule out him staying in Florida. But I think Brad Marchand does one of 3 things, and that is stay in Florida, goes back to Boston, or he comes out west in some capacity. Because I think the LA Kings make all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think Sam Bennett's staying in Florida. I mean, Conn Smythe winner. Why not?
Yeah.
Also, the irony is I'm also wearing a shirt that has an LA right there. I get it. 100%.
Yeah.
I'm aware.
No, I'm with you guys. I think Bennett resigns in Florida. But yeah, like, I mean, last year they lost 5 people from the team that won the cup. Stolars, Ekman Larson, Lorentz. 3 of those players signed in Toronto. Montour went to Seattle. But, I mean, clearly they were, I won't say they weren't missed because I'm sure they were popular among their teammates, but it's a matter of they also understand that this is a business. I do think that LA is where Marchand signs. As much as I would love to say yes, let him come and sign in Toronto, I don't see it happen.
I'm gonna pull up what LA has from a
Yeah.
cap perspective because I'm gonna say, hold on, I'm looking. They have just over 21.7 mil.
Wow.
Now I'm gonna look more into who they all have to sign and if they have. Um, okay, Tanner, you're not, or and Trevor Lewis. Do think they're both out. They do have Alex Lafreniere, um, Taylor Ward, and Andre Kuzmenko as RFA. Like Lafreniere is a RFA, Ward and Kuzmenko is a UFA. And then on their defense, only Gavrikov from their roster from last year is a UFA. And as of right now, they have Doughty, Mikey Anderson, Joel Edmondson, Jordan Smith, Kyle Burrows, Jacob Moverare, and then Brant Clark coming in. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 7 defensemen already. Their goaltending's in place. David Rittich is the only UFA, but they have Eric Portillo, who very well could be the backup to Darcy Kemper. I don't think LA needs to do too much to the roster they have now. And if you still have 21 million, I think you can look at LA as being that market to add a couple big names, whether it is a defenseman or a couple forwards. But I wouldn't be surprised if they go out. Imagine you sign Marner for, say, 13 mil and Marchand for 7 mil, 20 million. Your team just got a lot deeper.
Yep.
Yeah, you're at that point. Your team's making a run for the cup.
There's 4 really interesting names on the defensive side of things that 2 I could see as a fit. I think 1 does re-sign with Florida, that being Ekblad. But Brent Burns from Carolina is UFA.
Yeah. I'm going to say if he doesn't re-sign in Carolina, what about a reunion in Minnesota? What happens if Minnesota comes out of this and they sign a Brock Besser and a Brett Burns?
Oh, can you imagine that pairing?
Well, one's a forward, one's a defenseman.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but still, like, imagine them sharing the ice is what I'm saying.
Yeah, like I think you just got a little bit better on both ends. I don't know. I'll let you guys talk while I pull up kind of like their situation.
Sure. The other one I'm going to look at is a Dmitry Orlov, also coming out of Carolina.
I want to still venture back to Brent Burns a little bit here because when it comes to Brent Burns, I love the guy. There's just something about him I like. So wherever he goes, I'm for it. I'm happy where he goes, and I think Minnesota would be a great a place for him. If Carolina resigns him, good.
I'm already going to just say probably not for Brent Burns in Minnesota because already contracted this year. They have Brock Faber, Jared Spurgeon, Jonas Brodin, Jacob Middleton, and Zach Bogosian as their 5. And then they also have Zeev Burnham and David Yurchek kind of there. So they already have 7 defensemen signed for next season. From a forward group, their only UFAs are Gustav Nyquist, who I do believe is going to be just let go to the main roster. The interesting question is what they do with Marcos Rossi, who is somebody I think of target. And that's why I'm looking at that one. We know that Jonathan Toews is signing with the Winnipeg Jets on July 1 because he wants to play closer to home. The rumors that Brock Besser wants to do the same and wants to be a Minnesota Wild on July 1. I think that one's all but certain. Unless something pops up, I think you can bank on that one. I also wonder if they're going to try to do something in goal as well. We do know that Marc-Andre Fleury is retired. He is no longer going to be an active goalie in the NHL. So do they look at filling that spot with somebody?
Mhm.
And that's where I think Jake Allen makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah.
I already said it earlier. I mean, sorry, Bess, go ahead.
So with the I totally lost my train of thought. Go ahead, OMD. Let me regain it.
So I said earlier, like we've heard Mitch Marner's name linked to teams like in LA, Utah, Chicago. I haven't heard it linked to really any of like the San Jose's, the Anaheim. Well, we've heard it linked to Anaheim, but the San Jose's. I do think that perhaps the best fit for him is Seattle. Again, you've got that far less media engagement to deal with. You're not going to be under the scrutiny. And you're coming in, yes, you are going to become the new face of the franchise to go along with a Shane Wright, a Matty Beniers, a Brandon Montour, and a Jared McCann. So you can sort of transition in almost seamlessly and still head up your power play, head up the PK. The head coach there is somebody who was a coach for him in Toronto. So I think that is the prime fit for him. For John Tavares, I think if he's going to go anywhere, I do think he resigns, even though it was suggested that there was a lowball offer put forward. If he goes anywhere, I see him going back to the island.
Okay. I
see where you're coming from with that one on OD. I really do. But if I'm John Tavares, maybe I'd also look at teams that I'd look at other teams that I would just want to maybe experiment with, as it were.
I do too. I have a 1-year option that I think could be interesting.
Okay.
What about the Vancouver Canucks?
I don't see it.
I don't see it either. But if you can imagine guys like John Tavares playing in that scenario, what would that make for a mentorship with, or not even a mentorship, but somebody to help calm the locker room for a guy like Quinn Hughes to really ownership and then have say, we're going to bring him in. And the reason why we're bringing him in is because we want you to help be a better leader. And let's be honest, John Tavares is a captain from both the Islanders and the Leafs. He knows how to be a leader. He knows how to control a locker room. Would it make sense for Vancouver to bring him in to not only help their compete level, but also help Quinn Hughes in that sense of, look, you're our captain. We want you to stay. Will this be an offer that would make you want to stay? They don't have a lot of money to play with. They do have some. If you can get Tavares at an 5 or under, you'd still have enough money to bring in somebody else.
Right. 2 other names on this list. Jamie Benn from Dallas. Now I think we all see him re-signing and taking a hometown discount. Play with really the only team he's ever known.
Yeah, and this is a guy that if I'm a team closer to the cap, that to me, he's somebody that, depending on what it takes on a contract, I'm with you. I don't see him moving away. But if you're either the Vegas Golden Knights or the Tampa Bay Lightning, do you consider it?
I think you have to. I think even if you are the Edmonton Oilers or the Toronto Maple Leafs, you have to consider it.
Oh, I can guarantee you the Oilers will not be in on Jamie Benn. I do believe the Oilers will be after, if they're going to go off forwards, I'm going to say this. One, we don't have the world's largest trade block. We do have some. I don't think you want to give up Sam O'Reilly. I don't think you really want to give up your 27 draft first rounder anyway.
Mhm.
What I do think they end up doing is looking at what they have and saying, let's try to find within budget how we can keep this, making a couple changes. I think it really determines if the Oilers can move an Evander Kane and a Victor Arvidsson. That's going to create some room because one of two things, you're going to be extended Evan Bouchard. What term that is, I don't know. You're going to improve the goaltending, so you need financial room for both those moves.
Yeah.
They have some already, so I'm not too worried about Bouchard. I'm more worried about that improvement in goal, and then what are you going to do? Because there's guys like Connor Brown, and I'm hearing that Trent Frederick is legit. Like sometime this week, we're going to be getting an 8-year extension worth north of 3.5, under $4 million for him, which I think is a steal of a deal, especially at 8 years. Like pretty wild that it's an 8-year deal. I'm hearing 1.9 to 2.4 over 4 years for Connor Brown.
Right.
So those are things, if they're done, the Oilers, they don't need another. I mean, you can never not use another center.
Right.
But to me, Jamie Benn I don't think fits the bill when, and maybe not, like maybe they bring back the Corey Perry and Corey Perry says, hey, why don't you bring him in? I don't know. But I just don't think Jamie Benn is what they're looking for, especially with Jamie Benn's age, because I honestly do think he is regressed the last couple of years. And I think unless you're a team looking to just add that depth,
right,
you're good. I just don't think Edmonton is that fit.
Yeah, and that's where I think I agree with you, Parrish. I think Tampa Bay would be the better bet for a guy like Jamie Benn to go in as well.
Another really interesting name, because I thought he was retired, that is on this list is Nicholas Backstrom from Washington.
He's still playing? I thought he was retired too.
Well, no, he went to Europe to play and is coming back, I believe. There is something about him going back to Washington that I would really much like to see. But to be fair, if he's not going back to Washington, I can already envision a Winnipeg Jets jersey with his name on it already.
Yep, I see it too, actually.
Do I think Winnipeg has that cap? I don't. So that's why I kind of circle kind of more to the teams that do like those European guys.
Yeah.
Whether it's a Boston, whether it's maybe even an Anaheim. For whatever reason, anybody who plays on Washington, I already see them in Anaheim. Don't believe me? Go check something. Shattenkirk,
right?
Blows my mind. Cogliano? I don't know.
Now with Winnipeg losing Nikolai Ehlers to the free agency this year, does that free up a little bit of money for them, or is it that just because Jonathan Toews is coming in and signing, that takes over what Nikolai Ehlers would have been making?
I don't think Toews is going to completely take that as well.
No.
But another name, and I'm going to throw this out there because I did mention him earlier. If by chance it doesn't be a thing in Minnesota, what area is very close to Minnesota?
Manitoba.
What about Brock Besser to the Winnipeg Jets?
Yes. As my as my hometown team, yes.
I hate to say it, I see Besser being a fit there, but I think he and Connor might struggle to be who's the primary winger, scoring winger. Name that I see actually going to Winnipeg over that is an Andrew Mangiapane.
Ooh, I heard something about him. You guys talk. I'm gonna hold on.
I
I
actually
think I
wanted
might.
I actually wanted to bring up Nikolai Ehlers, and I'm just curious as to where you guys think he may end up going in the free agency.
LA. Anybody I see in a Winnipeg Jets jersey, I already see it in LA Kings jersey. Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah.
As prime example. Even the New Jersey Devils, I actually see him going, to be quite honest. Also, I was hearing some rumors about Toronto and Mangiapane.
Yeah,
And I'm actually very curious on that because I think that makes sense.
it does. It does. And I mean, I loved Mangiapane when he was in Calgary. Yes, he was a leaf killer. But I think that you can get him on a 1 or 2 year sort of a prove it deal. I think, and again, yes, this is going to be me being a homer, but that's where a Nikolai Ehlers fits. He could slot in, at a 4 or 5 year, $8 million a year, only $2 million more than he's making now, and we still have the cap space. And then you've got him playing alongside whoever our second line center is.
I can also see Nashville being a player into this one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but Nyquist, I've always thought they needed a player just like Nyquist that they lost, right? So this player makes all the sense to me. Also, so does St. Louis for whatever reason.
I think
I just don't know if St. Louis has the cap for this.
for me, I think Nashville has to be a lot smarter this year rather than, going out and being that big player like they were last year with, the Stamkos, the Shea, the Marchessault. They need to put the players around those guys as opposed to trying to go out and get another big piece.
Yeah. I know I mentioned Tyler Toffoli, and we all know that he is in San Jose right now.
Yes.
If Gustav Nyquist is looking for a 1 or 2 year payday, does a team like the San Jose Sharks make sense in that scenario? Because let's face it, they could really get away with 1 or 2 years because that just means whoever they're drafting has that time to develop, and they're not necessarily going right into the deep end right away. So I don't think I would be very quick to eliminate the San Jose Sharks in this scenario. Based off that, they do have the cap space. They could offer him a 1 or 2 year deal at pretty much whatever Nyquist wants and be okay with it. And at one point, they do have to get to the floor. So this could be one of those small contracts to do that. And if I'm Nyquist, if I can't get what I want out of a team that is contending, why not just take the payday for a 1 year to a San Jose Sharks?
We took a look at San Jose's defense earlier, and they're really going to be struggling this year. We know Brent Burns has history there. He played there. I don't think he wants to go back.
No, I don't think Burns wants to go back. I think he only would have wanted to go back if Thornton was still there, but obviously Thornton's retired.
Or if Carlson was still there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've got a couple of other names. 3 on the defensive side, actually, that could really, really help. One being Ivan Provorov from Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, you've got Jeff Petrie, who is a free agent from Detroit.
Yeah.
And number 3, making a return to California, just going across the state, Vladislav Gavrikov.
Now, that's a name I'm honestly in love with the player. I've always liked him. I remember his time in Columbus, and I thought the Oilers should have grabbed him when he was a free agent before he signed with the Kings. If I'm the Kings, I'm doing everything I can to keep him because I think he's a staple to their blue line, to be quite honest with me. But if he is moving, I can't see why any team, all 32 teams, aren't in on him. Here's a scary thought. What if Gavrikov, for 1 year, takes a flyer with the Florida Panthers?
Right.
Then Florida's probably looking at a third year with the Cup.
You don't think Florida's already looking at three-peat by now?
Oh yeah.
I would if I was Florida. But
what about a Besser to go and compliment a Macklin Celebrini in San Jose?
I think they really have to overpay on that one.
Mm-hmm. They have to throw everything at the wall for that one.
Again, I think Minnesota is a shoo-in for Brock Besser. I only bring up Winnipeg in case something does prevent it. But I got to ask, though, before we go anywhere, should we play the calendar for one bit?
I think that's probably a good idea. I think the people do need to know everything we have going on here at the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program.
All right.
Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program bring you the week of streams. All times are in Eastern Time. Monday nights you get the Locker Room Breakdown at 7 p.m., followed by the Raw Patrol at 8 p.m. Tuesday brings you the flagship show, Turnbuckle Talk, at 8:05 p.m. Wednesday we play games with the PlayStation Showcase at 8 p.m. Thursday we got total non-stop action with Brace for Impact at 8 p.m. Friday we game again with Unleashed, the Jessica Wilde story at 7 p.m. Following the game, join us for the SmackDown Security Detail at 8 p.m. The weekend brings you Saturday Night Gaming at 8 p.m. On Sunday be sure to catch the Chris Parrish podcast at 12:15 p.m. followed by the Boar's Nest at 8 p.m. Be part of the shows and join the chat every day.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is where all of the programming we have going on here at the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program. For more information, also check us out on our website, turnbucklestudios.org. There's a section there where you can meet the team, including the three of us, as well as Carl Carafel and Bubba Duke, where our latest episodes can be found. And if you're interested in getting into content creation or podcasting, or whether you want potential collaborations, or whether you want to help us out behind the scenes, it's all welcome. Just send us an email.
So, in regards to Brock Besser, the Vancouver Canucks are still heavily pursuing on ways to keep him. That is right away. The teams that are already reportedly linked to him are the Los Angeles Kings, Minnesota Wild, Ottawa Senators, Tampa Bay Lightning, Anaheim Ducks, Buffalo Sabres, Chicago Blackhawks, Nashville Predators, and the Detroit Red Wings. That is a source from the fourth period, but they also said, look at the top two teams, and that is Los Angeles and Minnesota Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if it's not, and I'm gonna say this, I have not closed the door on Besser staying with Vancouver, but the closer we get to July 1, if he hasn't signed, if I was Vancouver, I would simply just trade the rights away and try to get a better pick, like a good pick out of this, because this then still allows Minnesota to sign him to an 8-year deal instead of 7. And right. I think that does hold weight, because the one thing I think we have to look at is that coming in the new CBA, there are talks about lowering the contract length to 7 being a max for a re-sign extension and 6 being the max for a July 1 signing instead of 7 to 8.
Could we see a potential for a sign and trade with Besser?
Yes. Yes, I do. And the reason why I think that is because I do think that 8-year deal could be very beneficial. I think a lot of people override job security, and there's a lot of players in the NHL that rely on it. That is usually what gets held up in contracts, negotiations, and something that actually is the reason to why there's an additional couple million or that money that you're like, well, why isn't it larger? Well, a lot could be they sacrificed the extra year or extra couple years for a couple million.
Right.
So it's something of worth. So if you can do Brock Besser, I think at a good, I would mirror the Sam Bennett, 7 mil over 8. I think any team is doing that.
Okay.
It might be an overpayment in the latter part of the years, but I think the player you can get right now. We talked about Trevor Zegras, a player that needs a change of scenery. I think Brock Besser is a player who can change scenery and be okay.
Yeah.
And I think he's at a higher level right now than Brock Besser or than Trevor Zegras. So I think Brock Besser, if you can find that right fit and sign long term, I think you do it in a heartbeat.
Now, and I'm going to go to Minnesota here. If you get Brock Besser for a sign and trade, do you do that Marco Rossi deal?
Yeah, but I'm asking Vancouver for more.
Really?
Yeah, I 100%.
Oh, yeah.
Marco Rossi's 23 years of age. Brock Besser, I think, is closer to 30. I do think that the ceiling of Marco Rossi is higher than I do Brock Besser. So I wouldn't be surprised, not to mention, why make the deal with Vancouver now when in just over a week you can just get him for basically free? And then you still have the power of the Marco Rossi situation.
Right.
So if I'm moving that, I'm asking for at least a first round pick on top of Brock Besser, because right now I'm just trading for the negotiation rights. So if it's a sign and trade, sure, but they have to sign off on that as well.
Right. Another really interesting name coming up on the RFA list this year is Winnipeg's Gabe Vilardi.
Yeah. I don't see why Winnipeg would move on from him. But an RFA, depending on what it would take to get him signed, I think he stays. Because what did he make last year?
3.4375.
Okay, so I'm going to say he's probably looking at a 4.6 to 4.9. I don't know if Winnipeg has a space for that.
Right.
So unless they can move out, and here's the thing: do you move, or do you just let Nikolai Eilers go and sign him?
Right.
You probably could, but do they still have the allowance for the Jonathan Toews deal and then also the ability to do something else? I don't think they do.
No, I mean Taves' deal is a 1 year, $2 million, but up to $5 million in bonuses.
Yeah. So if I'm the San Jose Sharks, this is something I'm looking into. I'm going to ask Winnipeg, hey, what if, just what if, we say you can have the 30th overall pick. You can have maybe a future pick and a prospect. And then we do a sign and trade deal with Vilardi. Why would Winnipeg say no?
Right.
I would be, if I'm San Jose, I would go after it, because that's another good piece you can use, another good piece you can have on your current day roster.
Yeah. So according to Puckpedia, Winnipeg's cap space is at 24 mil.
Yeah, but who all do they have to sign?
That's the question right now.
And that's 24.46. And I'm looking at their team right now as we speak. They have Appleton that they still have to sign, and I believe they will. Brandon Tanev, who probably not. They also have. Yeah, they might. They could. They could keep him. They already have Jonathan Tays pegged on Puckpedia, so that looks.
Yeah,
to
they
be-
have him pegged at a 1 year, $2 million deal.
Yeah, but the 2 million can go up to more, as OMD did say.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna. So
Yeah,
I'm
because it's one
gonna
of those things with Tays, right? Where if he showcases just how good he is, they'll be like, "Hey, we're gonna throw more money at you." Right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a performance bonus is up to 5 mil, so he very
Yeah.
well could make 7. So if I was Winnipeg, you have to keep at least 5 of that out there in the case Jonathan Tays matches it. But then you're
Mhm.
paying an overage charge. So I'm looking at that more as you have 19 at just under 19 and a half mil.
Yeah.
To play with, and Mason Appleton's going to come at a heavy price, and then I think you need to add a defenseman if you're Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm not going to lie, Gavrikov could make sense there too.
Oh, he could. If you gentlemen will excuse me for a moment, Parrish, I will let you do your ad read. It is time for my patented locker room visit.
Okay, I don't know if we actually have the thing here, but what I will do is just let everybody know that if you want to grab all the latest merchandise from Turnbuckle Studios, then please go and hit carlcarafel.redbubble.com right now. I made a purchase just the last week. I got some nice Chris Paris merchandise that my son can wear. That's right. So if you want to get, whether it's some hoodies, whether it's some shirts, whether it's even some pillows, some cups or pins, stickers, all the memorabilia that you can think of, you can get multiple different products with a show's logo on there. You can get the Boar's Nest that you see right here. You can get Saturday Night's Gaming. You can get the Locker Room. You can get Turnbuckle Talk. You can even get, I think, the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program logo. But go to carlcarafel.redbubble.com right now to check out what you can do, because the best part about this whole thing is you can create and manifest whatever you want on there. So go there, check it out, help support Turnbuckle Studios and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program by going to carlcarafel.redbubble.com now, because that is a great way to help support this channel, just like hitting that like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. So make sure you're doing what OMD just did, and that is making a deposit to the future of your future success. There you go. Did you change your shirt too?
No, I just took my sweater off.
Okay. Not only do we get a little bit of a more proper ad read, we also got a wardrobe change for OMD. A rare.
No wardrobe malfunction, just a wardrobe change.
Well,
Another
yeah,
interesting veteran name out there is Claude Giroux.
He, from what I understand, is very close to an extension with the Ottawa Senators. I do not think Claude Giroux is going anywhere. The one name I'm actually gonna put out there, and this could be a very good one for a lot of people. Victor Arvidsson out of Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
There is going to be a hard pursuit to move him. He did ask for a trade prior to the trade deadline. It does not look like he is going to be an Edmonton Oilers starting next season. He was not played in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final. A very, very big and obvious sign that he's not a part of the future with the team. I think he is more suited to join a new team this year than Claude Giroux.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. We talked about Andrei Kuzmenko earlier, who was moved twice last season. He was moved from the Canucks from the Calgary to the Flyers, and then to LA, where he thrived.
Yeah.
I think LA re-sign him?
I think they're dumb if they don't. But let's just play devil advocate and say they don't. If New York decides to move away from Artemi Panarin, I think Kuzmenko in New York City, I think I do it. 100% I do it. I really like the player. I think if you're giving him a great center to play with, especially one that likes to dish out the puck, that's why I look at Mika Zibanejad. If he stays, yeah. And there's familiarity with JT Miller being there as well.
Right. I am going to say this in the off chance, because I'm pretty sure Marner is gone from Toronto. I don't think we're going to get the sign and trade. In the off chance that Tavares goes as well, Velarde and Ehlers, do it.
But if you're also Toronto, would you consider Kuzmenko?
Oh, absolutely.
If you're Ottawa, would you like? I think all the teams in the league should look at Kuzmenko. In fact,
Yes.
I really wanted him a couple of years ago for the Oilers. I just now don't think he's going to be as cheap as he was a couple of years ago.
Right.
So that's one that I'd be very airy for. But if I'm Winnipeg too, I think Winnipeg, if you're going to bring in another scoring winger, we talk about who could replace Ehlers. I think Andrei Kuzmenko is a perfect.
100% agree there.
I'm going to put a name out there for the Oilers goaltending situation. And I think he's going to come in a little bit cheaper than he did last year, and that is Alexander Georgiev.
So I can tell you that Alan Mitchell, who is currently a local reporter in Edmonton, he has a lot of books out too as well. Part of TSN 1260 when it was a thing, linked to the Oilers with Peyton Krebs, for Georgi Merkulov, Matty Blumedel, but also goaltender Thatcher Demko, who, if I'm Vancouver, you need to make a decision on this player this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, injuries are a big one, but when he is fine, he is a really good goaltender.
Yeah.
So that's also a goaltending option that I would look into. Especially if he is going to be a 1A to 1B with Stuart Skinner. I think that's a very good option there. But again, if Thatcher Demko's out there, some Philadelphia Flyers, man.
Yeah.
Why not? If I'm Boston Bruins and I want to get that partner to Swayman, why not?
Yeah.
But if I'm Anaheim and I'm moving away from John Gibson, why not? There's a lot of places that could benefit from this as well. So I think that's also another name from a trade route you can look at.
Yeah. And lastly, I mean, we're here 2 hours and 15 minutes into this show, and I mean, time has absolutely flown.
There's a lot to talk about with the NHL.
There really is. There really is. Christian Dvorak has a third-line center option, really, from Montreal is UFA.
And if you're Montreal, why are you not looking at keeping him?
And that's exactly what I was going to say, Parrish. Why not? Why would you let this guy go? Because like a third line centerman, he still has that ability to build himself up to be, whether it's a second line or even a first line guy. He still has that ability. He can still put the pucks in the net. So why not keep him?
The one name that I actually really like in Montreal is former Coyote, former Utah Hockey Club, former Oiler, Nick Bukestad.
I was so jacked when Montreal got him, not going to lie.
Montreal didn't have Bukestad, did they?
No.
I'm sorry. I was thinking of somebody else. My bad.
No, he was a Coyote Oiler, then signed back with Arizona when they moved to Utah. But I like the player. I didn't want the Oilers to lose him or to let him go. But I think he makes a lot of sense in Montreal. And if Montreal does, for whatever reason, allow Dvorak to go elsewhere, which if I'm Dvorak, I don't blame him for testing the free agency. Not a lot of players get an opportunity to really check their worth, and there's a lot of teams that could benefit from having that player.
Yeah.
If I'm him, I'm doing it. But if I'm Montreal, I'm hardly being aggressive on keeping the player. But I'm also looking at guys like Nick Bjugstad as a potential replacement for him as well. I kind of want to go to Anaheim here.
I'm going to put this name out there for Montreal. And you know what? The guy thrived in Toronto when he was healthy. I think a reunion with his former team to finish his career where he started is Max Pacioretty.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm looking at Anaheim for Dvorak, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, no, Pacioretty, yeah.
I wanted Pacioretty back in Montreal the moment he left Montreal. Not gonna lie.
But if we're gonna play devil advocate and just assume he doesn't go back, does anybody not see Pacioretty 67 on the Vegas Golden Knights? I already see that jersey in my head. And I don't know why. Do I like it? No, I don't like anybody in it. But
I do think if he doesn't go anywhere, I think he resigns in Toronto. I think it's Toronto, Montreal are really his.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's not to lie. I thought Max Pacioretty was a good fit in Toronto to begin with. So,
how about a Vancouver Canucks though?
He'd be a great fit over there as well.
Do you think Pacioretty is at a point where he has the capability of calling a shot? I don't. Do we think that if you want guys that could help a room and you want to kind of bring that room closer together, you want to bring in some veterans. I said Tavares earlier. I know that's a long shot, but I think Pacioretty makes sense in that end. And I don't think he's going to cost you as much as you think.
No, I think
you might have to pay. Yeah, you might have to pay him closer to 5, but I mean, on a 1-year deal, I think that's really low risk because you can move that at the deadline, no problem.
Pacioretty is not going to sign for 5. He just played on a 1 year, 1.5. I think if you're going to get him, you get him at a league minimum.
Then even better. I don't think you're paying for him for what he does on the ice per se. I think you're paying him for what he brings to your locker room.
And that's experience, and he's got a lot of it.
And a lot of teams either struggling with with their locker room or a young team in general could benefit. I'll even throw you one, and that is either actually even 2, Utah or the Kraken.
Mm-hmm.
I think really what the Kraken need. Who was their starting goaltender last year?
Oh, I can get you that. I do not know right off the top of my head.
Was that Grubauer, or did they move on from him?
Grubauer, I thought, signed there. Let me just double check. I want to say, it is Grubauer. He has 2 years left at $5.9 million. You're also thinking of Joey Decord, who's there for another. He is not a free agent until 2030, with a cap hit of $5 million until the year 2030. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for 5 more years. They have Joey Decord. So I think their goaltenders are set for the next couple of years with Grubauer and Decord.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was also going to suggest, would Georgiev be a fit to back up Sam Montembeault in Montreal? Yes, Montreal has to give up a Caden Primo.
See, I don't know. I'm not certain about that.
I know Georgiev.
I've always found Georgiev to be a little bit on the hit and miss kind of side. So
if I was Montreal, if I was going to grab any goalie, I'm looking at Ilya Samsonov.
Mm-hmm. That's where I was going to go. I'd look at Samsonov, you know.
But also, why not a reunion with Jake Allen? Like, it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Samsonov for me is a hit and miss goalie, and I see where you guys are coming from on Georgiev. He was fantastic with the Rangers. He was great his first year in Colorado, and then this year, Colorado struggled in front of their goaltending until they changed it midway through the season.
I think
Was
too,
it-
you have to look at the defense in front of him on those
Mhm.
teams. He played in New York when Trouba was still on the team.
Yeah.
And then when he went to Colorado, they had some injuries to their blue line at the time. So it wasn't really a fair shot. And then I believe, wasn't Georgiev now moved to San Jose at the deadline?
They moved him even well before the deadline, and
Yeah.
San Jose said, no, we're not re-signing him.
And he actually didn't do half bad. But yeah, best. No, I know I cut you off. So what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, wasn't Georgiev the goaltender, the starting goaltender when the Abs made a run for the cup and won the cup? Or am I thinking of somebody else again?
That was Darcy Kemper, I believe.
Yeah,
That won the cup.
Kemper was the goalie there.
Okay.
But I
thought
think
I
Kemper
remembered
and
Georgiev
Georgiev,
being-
I think they were
Yeah.
the tandem, though.
Yeah. I was going to say, I do remember Georgiev playing a couple of rounds in that final, or a couple of games in that final.
Or would Georgiev be that fit for a new starter in Minnesota?
I don't know if I just don't peg him as a starter.
Okay.
I think that's my issue. I think you could also look at maybe Boston as saying, okay, we got Swayman. Should we bring in Georgiev? If we're going to go down 1A, 1B, I think that's the best way of looking at what Georgiev is. Right? So, okay, what places do I know that have that? I think that's where you have to go. And sadly, yes, I do think Edmonton is probably going to look at that option. I think they're looking at all options for goaltenders, to be quite honest. So he doesn't have I don't think he'll have a bad cap hit. I think it's very doable, but yeah, I think you look at teams that are doing the 1A, 1B or are just very desperate for the goaltending aspect.
And another interesting name on the RFA list that was moved earlier this season from the Rangers to Seattle in Capo Caco, a former number 2 overall pick. Does he resign or does he go to free agency?
I think he goes to free agency.
Yeah.
Sadly, he's someone. To me, he could very well be what Shane Wright is looking at in this future. Someone that had a lot of potential, a lot of expectations were put on him, and he just didn't develop into that player that could meet them or exceed them. So if I'm I'm looking at, and I'm going to say this: why not look at a Washington as a place to go? Okay. I'm looking at a 1-year deal for him as just a bank on yourself, prove a deal that you still can do it. So you go to a situation that's going to help you out. So why not go to a place that has the best scoring player of all time in Alexander Ovechkin?
Right.
Yeah.
So go there, share a locker room with him, and get a little bit more confidence, because are you telling me that can't be a thing? Another locker room that I could see him going to approve a deal, Pittsburgh Penguins. Go play with the Sidney Crosby of Genny Malkin. So why not do that for your career? I think this is what he owes himself. So in a year or two, if he does do a good job, he can go get paid.
Would a Vancouver be a fit for him? Because you've got him and Elias Pettersson can really maybe bounce and improve each other. Or do we see Vancouver just blow it all up?
I think Vancouver blows it all up. I mean, you got to think about who the number 1 pick is this upcoming draft. Not this upcoming one, but the one after, and that is McKenna. That's a generation guy. If I'm Vancouver, I think this could be a great piece of the puzzle to relaunch kind of your identity. I don't think it's a good fit. I do think Chicago is closer to being a dumpster fire than a success story, kind of right
In
now.
Vancouver, not Chicago.
No, I think Vancouver's way worse right now.
Yeah,
They don't have a Connor Bedard in their system.
no.
Connor Bedard changes a lot of perception. Um, I think Vancouver and Buffalo are closer to comparisons, and I think Buffalo is just ahead of them based on who they do have. But then again, Vancouver, it's a great place to play, and people like the city, and they still have Mr. Hughes there on defense.
Right.
So it's not a lost attempt, but if Hughes does get moved, then all bets are off on what they're doing. That's why I think if I'm Vancouver, I'm going all out on the free agency, and I'm doing everything I can. Their team, I believe, has to be all in on Mitch Marner, has to be all in on Sam Bennett if he does hit free agency. They have to be all in on Brad Marchand. Yeah. How insane would it be if the guy that beat you in the Stanley Cup Finals here ends up coming to your team?
Right. I was reading just yesterday, and Vancouver is being told already by a lot of agents, this player is not signing with you. Apparently, like, Vancouver is not a destination, something that I know you as an Oiler fan are familiar with. After the Pronger situation a number of years ago, I know it's something that we as Toronto fans are familiar with because of the media.
It wasn't the Pronger situation. It was the decade of darkness situation.
Yeah.
If anything, the Pronger situation more or less showed you why Pronger was an idiot. But we brought in Pronger and Pekka. Those are two respectable hockey players.
Oh, absolutely.
So, it was Edmonton's lack of winning that people didn't want to play in. And then they're like, well, if I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose in a nice city than a place that's just really cold. So,
yeah.
if I'm gonna lose, do I want to be in -40 weather too? Probably not.
So, and I know it's something that we've dealt with, even with 50 plus years of losing and not getting a cup, as well. The media market and how much they put words in the fans' mouths. I will say that.
You're closer to 60 than 50, but yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
But
58 by my count.
Yeah, let's
the
not
media
forget.
putting the words in people's mouths. And yes, sure, there are fans that, oh, they need to move on from him. I know people that are saying the Leafs need to move Matthews and re-sign Tavares.
Those people, I think, drink Molson Canadian, and they're both idiots.
Yeah.
In two different ways. As I have Coors with me. But it's Coors Original. Come on. I don't like that. I question you to begin with, too.
Another interesting name on the RFA market is Philip Kurashev from Chicago.
I don't think he leaves. To be quite honest, I think Bouchard is a much more intriguing thing. And I could even say that there are three things about this one. You could have a north of 11 million a year, 8-year extension. The talk of a bridge deal is very much a thing going on. I'm hearing more about a bridge deal of 1 year. I hate it. And I can tell you why I hate it, because you lose all power from the team aspect. But what you do is you tell the player, look, we're going to give you what you want. So give us the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I think the two teams that probably are being viewed as strong destinations to go to are the two teams that played in the Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That basically has his core in place. So I don't see Evan Bouchard moving on. But if he is still an unsigned player July 1, I'm going to pose this. If you're the San Jose Sharks or the Buffalo Sabres, would an Evan Bouchard for Owen Power trade? Not one-on-one. But does that sound like something both teams would be interested in? Because one, Edmonton would get a defenseman that's signed that you can work with that would benefit you. For Buffalo, you now have a new number one guy on your team. He's offensively he's an offensive defenseman, something that actually would attract more fans to your games because you need offense in that market.
Right.
So I'm just saying, if there's a destination for trading a guy that could want out to an RFA that maybe, just maybe, and I can tell you from firsthand, guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl want Evan Bouchard back on the team.
Yeah.
To a point where there is a speculation that Connor McDavid has told the Edmonton Oilers he wants the team to figure out the Evan Bouchard thing prior to him because he knows the value of Evan Bouchard on years to come. And based on that conversation, I just want to tell this to anybody who thinks Connor McDavid's not signing an 8-year extension. I'm pretty sure that if you tried to fight Sen would beat you. That's how much I think of your opinion. But I'm just saying, if by chance that goes south, would you not consider that from both sides?
I would consider it. If I'm Buffalo, though, you've got a player like Bowen Byram who has proven he's been in the thick of it with Colorado, and he comes in on that right side. If I'm Buffalo, yes, you've got to give up a little bit more, but I don't think Bouchard's signing an $11 million extension in Buffalo. I think that the Rasmus Dahlin deal, the Owen Power deal that they already have, and the Tage Thompson deals.
Take into account you're getting an RFA player. You still hold the power on an RFA level. So you can qualify them. You can do, you have that end. And that does hold some trade power. No pun intended to the player we're talking about.
Yeah. But I think Bowen Byram would be a great fit for Edmonton.
Yes. I just like Owen Power.
You just like the name Owen Power.
Hey, if your market's allowed to talk about Connor McDavid signing, why can't I talk about Owen Power coming in?
You're absolutely right.
Right. I'm not a selfish guy. I'm a realist. I'm aware of what my team does, and I'm not. I even made the joke on Friday about it, but why not? I think we're far. I think all three of us, with Bess, you being a Montreal fan, OMD, you being a Toronto fan, and me being an Edmonton fan, I think we are three of the top 4 Edmonton markets. And I'm going to put Ottawa in there because they're a very competitive team. And I think they shocked everyone this year. And I think that is no fluke. I truly don't. When you have guys like Brady Tkachuk at the top of the helm, you have Claude Leroux. Claude Leroux is such a great addition to that team. Yeah. But these are teams, if you're going to go to Canada, you're going to go to one of those 4. And if you're going to go to and Winnipeg, I can't forget Winnipeg. I always forget about Winnipeg. Probably because you guys lost a team already. But that's beside the point. Winnipeg's also good. But if you're going to go to Canada, those are going to be the 4 to 5 places you go. Nobody's going to go to Calgary. Nobody's going to Vancouver unless you're getting paid well. Or you're looking at just trying to cash in on your self-worth. Yeah. And that's where I think, a guy like Dvorak might actually go. Could be a place. Calgary, Toronto, if he stays in Canada. But I don't. There is something about Buffalo that I think could be a huge trading partner for the Canadian markets. Because they do have players, whether it's Alec Tuck. Imagine what he would be in a Montreal uniform. I like that trade already.
Yep.
depending on what Montreal has to give up. If you're telling me a second rounder for Alex Tuch is the deal, who says no?
Right.
Yeah.
And you know what? Buffalo, just because it's close to home, I think Buffalo is another very viable option for Mitch Marner.
Or Patrick Kane? He could Uber. He doesn't
All
have
right,
to piss
guys,
off any driver.
My shoulder's on fire. I got to cut out early, guys. So
All right. Not
enjoy
a
the rest of your
problem.
show.
Thank you, Best. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a good night,
Have a
guys.
good one.
You too. Thank you for joining. We much appreciate it.
Another option that I think does come in, and I think we do have to talk about the trade aspect here. There's a lot of trades that are going to be happening.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot of trade. We could see a potential, like a good plethora of amount of rights being moved.
Yeah.
But I know from an Oilers standpoint, Evander Kane name is being put out. I know Victor Arvidsson's name is out there as well. I think another player that you could look at is Adam Henrique, although I don't think that's going to be a want to move. It's out there. I do think they can attract teams. I do think I think with that movement of Mason Marchment opens the door for Evander Kane. The only difference to me, and I agree with Frank Saravalli's approach, is one has baggage and one does not. Now, does Evander Kane's perception change with what he did in Edmonton? I don't know. I'm too close to the vest to tell you if it did or not. I feel it did, but I still feel that player still holds a very close perception of what he had when he came in to what he has now. And I do think he is, I wouldn't say his welcome is being worn out, but I do think that it's time to move on.
I'm with you. Like, I mean, we haven't heard anything of those issues since he first got signed by Edmonton, and then it was denied, and then the trade and all of that stuff. So, I mean, for me, I can say that my perception of Evander Kane, he was a talented player before, caught up in a messy situation. My perception of it has changed.
And the one player I'm going to put in to kind of be a mirror to that is Zach Kassian. Zach Kassian came in with a very weird, very low ceiling, changed his perception in a complete 360.
Yeah.
And there were multiple teams wanting him on when they found out that he was available. And he was definitely a salary dump for the Edmonton Oilers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Evander Kane, yes, that same thing would be. But I do think there are teams that would want him. As of today, I heard one of those teams was the Los Angeles Kings when you find out the general manager of LA happened to be the same one that traded and brought him in Ken Holland. If that does happen, what do you think that trade would look like? But also, kind of, what do you think on how many teams do you think Evander Kane would attract?
I think Evander Kane's teams that he attracts are probably 3 to 4 times bigger than they were with his perception going to Edmonton.
Also, to take into account, he has 1 year left of I believe it's 5.15. He does make the same amount of Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I don't care about what the opinion is of whether that's fair or not. That's just the realistic situation he has. But he has 1 year left. I think 1 year is a lot more attractable to bring in an Evander Kane. Your commitment to him is 1 year, and then if you don't like it by the trade deadline, you can move it.
Yeah, I think that Evander Kane is still going to go in and provide that locker room presence, that on-ice presence, because he does still play that gritty style game, but he also goes to the net, and he'll get those greasy goals. So he will provide a lot of leadership both on and off the ice.
And another sexy thing is, as of I believe it was March of this year, his no move clause changed to a modified no move clause, which means there was room for their team to move him. So a trade of his is plausible. You don't have to ask his permission necessarily.
Right.
You just have to ask for that list.
Yeah, I think at best, though, you're going to maybe get a second rounder and a second level prospect.
See, I'm thinking a similar thing to the Mason Marchment, but instead of the third and fourth, I'm thinking more of a fourth and a fifth.
Okay.
And the reason why, again, the baggage.
Yeah.
But with Mason Marchment, I believe he had 2 years left on his deal, and Evander Kane has 1. So I do think that could be a play in the situation, but I also think that if you're trading for him, I think you have to be somebody that needs to add more grit to your lineup. Yes, I see LA, but with the loss of Mason Marchment, I look at Dallas, but then I also look at teams that also could use that lost early out in the playoffs as well. So whether or not that could be a Carolina,
I'm going to look at two teams that didn't make the playoffs in Boston and Pittsburgh.
if you're going to go Pittsburgh, I have to put out Philadelphia.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking at a lot of teams that maybe didn't do well. You have to wonder, would Colorado kick tires on this one?
I think they'd be stupid not to. But I do think that there are other players out there that would really fit the mold of what Colorado is looking for. And again, I'm going to go to Pittsburgh with this. If they want another scoring winger, you've got Brian Rust or Ricard Raquel, who can come in and pick up that secondary scoring and play second, third line.
Yeah. I'm also going to throw a 1-year option of this player because he's only going to play for 1 more year. The reason I know, his mom said, or this player's wife said he can only play 1 more year. I firmly expect him to re-sign with Edmonton, but let's have fun and say, what happens if he doesn't? I think Corey Perry had one of his best years this past season. If he is a free agent on July 1, how do you not pursue that for a 1 year? He's a good locker room guy. He plays on that edge a little bit. He has a skill. And for 1 year, he's going to go for it.
If I'm Toronto, 100%.
Your only hope is that the curse isn't a real thing.
I'm a firm believer in the original 650-year curse, and I know we're closing in on 60. But
there's always that exception, right?
But you had Detroit, Chicago, Boston, and the Rangers all won it in and around that 50-year mark or just shortly after.
Yeah, and I think we can be real. The Toronto Maple Leafs had one of the better years they've had in a very long time in terms of how far they went in the playoffs and what they were able to accomplish. I think the single fact that they still lost in a way where was not ideal to them, allows the fan base to go from A to Z in a second, and I get that because it's, you lost again. Well, we were up 2-0, we let it slide. I get that.
Yeah.
It's almost that reality of, hey, I know good things are happening to me, but something bad's about to happen, and then it does, and I'm not surprised about it. Right? I don't believe that in the current Leafs locker room, you're looking at what happened to the team 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
No.
They're only looking about what happened with their time there. And I look at a guy like Austin Matthews, who just surpassed his first season as captain. That's a change in dynamic. See how he does this year. Does he mature? Does he become a better complete player? Does he maybe get 100 points, but he's more 50-50 in terms of how he gets there?
Yeah.
Then is he 60-40, 70-30 kind of a thing? So that's something. Two, we talked about the Oilers needing a goalie. Does Toronto go into that goalie market as well? And they look at whether it's a Gibson, whether it's a Samsonov, who I believe played there before,
He did.
or a Jake Allen, or a, hey, Thatcher Demko, or hey, Opera Sheet Joel Hoffer.
I think we
why
have
not?
to look at everything.
The only thing is, I don't think you guys have a first round pick for the next 2 years. So that's going to really dictate some things.
We don't have a pick until the middle of the third round this year.
No, but I'm just talking about first round picks in general.
Yeah, no, we don't. I do think that with the situation with Wall, I think he got thrown into a situation in the playoffs when Stolarz got hurt. We didn't have him loose and ready to go. And that really backfired on us. I think that had we kept the platoon, the 1A, the 1B, at least through the first round of the playoffs, we would have been okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest with you in saying that I think I'm even probably unfairly blaming Wall. I see him getting traded
Okay.
this offseason. I think that will allow them to give Stolarz that extension next year if that's the route they choose to go. And if they do trade him, I think it could be for a first round pick. And then you can go and sign a Georgiev to come and play that backup to Stolarz.
Do you guys have any defensemen that are coming up?
No, all of our defense are actually signed through this season.
Okay. Because obviously, I would say, if you could move one defenseman in the hopes of bringing in a Gavrikov, I think that would be a hell of a move and an addition to the blue line.
It would. The problem is that the defensemen that I would see being moved are Philippe Myers and Simone Benoit. To a lesser extent, Ekman Larson, but Ekman Larson. Oh no, that was Vancouver. But yeah, it would be an Ekman Larson. I know we've heard Riley's name being kicked about again, as it is every year.
Yeah, I just don't know if that's a rational decision to make. I am looking at your roster right now. You do have just over 25 million in space. However, you do have the Tavares, the Martyrs, the Lorenz, and the Pacioretty's as UFAs. I think it's safe to say Pacioretty, Martyr, maybe Lorenz, not coming back.
See, I've got Lorenz on the return list.
Okay. Do you feel Lorenz is replaceable in free agency?
He is, but what he brought, and I know he didn't play all 82 games last year. Of his 6 goals, 4 of those were game winners.
Okay.
And yes, he is a fourth line. He is a heart and soul. I think he's back. I'd love to see Pacioretty back, but I wouldn't be upset. I see Lorenz back over a David Camp, who has 2 years left. I see Camp being traded. And I do see a former teammate of Victor Arvidsson's in Kalle Järnkrok being traded, and I love Järnkrok.
Mm-hmm. Where do you sit on the suggestion and the talks, the rumors that bring in Brad Marchand to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
He would be a fantastic addition. It would replace Tavares. If you bring in Marchand, you're basically saying, we're done, John.
Is that a bad thing?
No.
And then I would say, if you're Toronto, is this not the year to say we have to either go hard or we got to blow it up?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
So, again, I think you owe it to yourself then to go a route. You have to look at your top wingers. If I'm Toronto, I'm shooting a shot with Brock Besser. I just am.
Yeah.
If I'm Toronto, I'm looking at the Kaprizov situation and saying, hey, what a fantastic winger that would be to an Austin Matthews.
Yeah, and this is where I'm looking at, the Mangiapanis, the Gabe Velarde out of Winnipeg, the Nikolai Ehlers.
Well, Gabe Velarde is going to, if you offer sheet him, he is a first-round pick that you don't have. So you have to find a first-round pick to do something.
No, you have to have your first-round pick. It can't just be a first-round pick.
I know. That's what I mean. You have to find that, and I just don't think you're going to get it. So I'm looking at, why not Artemi Panarin?
I think if you're going to go with Panarin, I think that's just, again, too much against the cap. I think Marchand you can bring in.
You have over 20 million, man.
I know. But I'm going to look at players like Nick Robertson and Pontus Holmberg, who Robertson has struggled in his time with Toronto, and we've given him more of a leash and more of a runway than we gave Timothy Liljegren.
So, okay, I got to just take what did you say about Yarncrow again?
Yarncrow. He's got 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
Former teammate of Victor Arvidsson's with Nashville.
Yeah. Are you applying you would want Victor Arvidsson on your team?
No, I'm saying I think Yarncrow is gone.
Oh. After next season?
No, before this season. I think Yarncrow gets moved.
Okay, that's something though that this is why I gotta ask this though. Like, if you're moving these guys, you have to bring people in. You have to find someone that could play that center wing like Marner could. You have to bring in a centerman to replace Tavares. So if you're doing this stuff, and if you look at the free agent market, I think you have to shoot your shot on Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
I think a Nick Bukestad would actually be a great addition for you guys. But he's not going to be that main player. Tavares and Marner brought offense, so you have to look at how you can replace some offense. That is something that I'm just not sure you guys are going to be able to do per se on the free agent market. And it's why I think the trade option is probably a better suited place. Now, you said Nikolai Ehlers could work. He is 29, so I can see a 3-year deal. Maybe I would say,
I'm going to say it's got to probably be a 24, 3 years, $8 million per.
Okay, I was going to go 7.5, so pretty close. Pretty close. And with free agency, you do overpay, so could be. Another person I'm looking that could be a suitable for a 2-year thing, Michael Granlund.
Yep.
That I wouldn't hate But also, what about Robbie Fabry?
Yeah, very intriguing names. Another name that I've got on my list, and I know this would more likely be a third line situation, but a Riley Smith.
Okay. And I know you talked about Tanev before.
Yep.
A name that I'm intrigued with, and I'm pretty sure at one point he played with Toronto. I'm just double checking this to see if maybe he did not. Hold on. I'm just looking at his career. This website does not do a great no, he didn't play. But what about a Roslovic?
Yeah. Yeah, he'd be a good.
I think a
third
good,
line.
yeah. And I think I don't know, like it's going to be hard. I think it's an honest thing. This Mitch Marner situation is not an easy one to digest.
No.
He is too good of a player to lose for completely free.
Right.
It very much feels like what John Tavares did with the New York Islanders. That's what he's doing here. And and here's the thing. I have to wonder if John Tavares is doing the same thing to you guys like he did to the Islanders.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what do you guys do? And I think if this is your year that you know you have to go all in for, I think this is the time where you say, hey, if Artemi Panarin is available, go after him. We know he can produce similar numbers to Mitch Marner in this system. If guys like even Mika Zibanejad is available, do you go after that from a trade possibility?
I think again, you absolutely have to, and I think that this is where the names like a Robertson and a Holmberg really come into play. As well, we've got a young prospect in Easton Cowan who I'm going to guess is, he's going to training camp. Does he crack the opening night roster? Maybe. Will he get his 10-game look at the NHL level? Absolutely.
Isn't it 9 games?
Yeah.
If he gets 10, he's on the team.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, he'll get his 9-game look. And then if they need to, they can move him to the Marlies. Because, you already gave up 2 of your fan favorite prospects last year at the deadline in Fraser Minton and Nikita Grabenko.
Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
With all of the draft picks that we have been notorious for trading away for the last 2 decades.
Your draft history isn't exactly the greatest either, though.
No, we should have probably a couple or 2 in the last 20 years, but we've given up on all of this stuff.
Well,
to add around what we have. And I think that, I've said this before. I know you've heard me say it. 5 years ago, we should have traded Marner and we could have kept Hyman. We could have kept Bunting.
Yeah. Yeah, and trust me, I know losing Hyman for the Stanley Cup Finals definitely played dividends. I think that series was a lot different if we had Zach Hyman. Yeah. But a thing that I'm intrigued with is I think this is the year where Toronto has to have their ears to the ground on knowing everything.
Yeah.
I say this, we saw what the trade Mason Marchment with. I think that's going to play more dividends than people think.
Yeah.
These are the kind of trades that are steals for teams.
Yeah.
And you're going to talk about that later when the team does well. And I do think that the Seattle Kraken are going to benefit really well with the addition of Mason Marchment. So these are the kind of trades that your team needs to make, and just in general. And I say this because, well, the Oilers made some trades that really benefited them, whether it was the Matthias Ekholm, which I don't think a lot of teams really said, oh, this was the best trade, but it played the biggest impact on that trade deadline.
Absolutely.
Now, I'll say this. He's 35. Next year, he's a free agent. I'm not too sure if he remains an Edmonton Oiler. I would like it,
Right.
but you have to be realistic on where it sits. But I think these are the trades that Toronto has to make if they do want to go to that next level. They made a lot of great decisions on their DN.
Yeah.
I think Max Domi was a good addition for their team, but he also needs to be a player who steps up big for the team. And I think if he doesn't, that's a player that you have to move away from as soon as you can, because if he can't show you that he can be a better player, then he's not what you bargained for when you signed him.
Right. And the funny thing with Domi is, because we've seen this the last 2 years, he has, 9 goals 2 years ago, 8 goals last year. Struggles the first half of the season, but then turns it on for the second half of the season and the playoffs. And that's what got him 4 playoff goals.
Yeah.
Right. When you've got him tied with a Nylander, a Tavares, and a Knives in that 4, 5, 6 goal range, that's what we need, but we need that on a more consistent effort.
So, and I think this is where I kind of stand. If by chance this man is a free agent on July 1, which we've already said we don't think he is, but I don't think there's a doubt that Toronto's making the playoffs this upcoming season.
Right.
That's more of an assumption that they will. Do you say what John Tavares was making? This is what you, Sam Bennett, will make this contract.
Oh, I think you absolutely have to. I think you have to do that, 7-year, $11 million.
Like, and if you're a free agent, because by then, and you haven't signed an 8-year extension yet, you've given that power up, because on July 1, you cannot sign an 8-year extension anymore. Why not? Because now you're looking at 7 by 7, 7 by 8, so that's 49 to 56 million. But if it's 7 by 11, you're looking at 77 million. I mean,
looking at this list here, because Bennett is only.
Oh, he was not making close to this. He is.
No, I'm just trying to find his age.
I think he's 28, 27, maybe 29.
29.
Yeah.
So that's going to bring him to 36. So, especially with the way the cap is going to go up over the next few years, I think that would be an absolute steal. Mm-hmm. I think if you can get him a little bit less and get Marchand with him, then I think you're fantastic. And then I think you're just looking at essentially Bennett and Marchand trading places with Tavares and Marchand.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm looking at. Like, if you can trade places with them and give those exact averages to those players, and I think Marchand's going to be less. I think a lot of people expect that to be the truth.
Yeah.
But why would you say no? Knowing what these guys are capable of doing, I think they're upgrades to the players. You might see a little less goals, but when it comes to the playoffs, they make you a harder team to play against, and they can win you series. And I think that's the discrepancy that has really lacked in the Toronto teams in the last few years. And that would completely give new hope. And if we're talking about a team that had its best season in terms of playoff success, Well, who's saying no
Yeah.
to that?
Yeah.
But
However, my friend, I do think it's probably time we wrap up the show.
I think so too.
We've been going at this for 3 hours and a little bit.
Yeah, we're longer than an NHL game now.
Yes, we are. But thank you for joining me here on the Boar's Nest tonight.
Of course.
Always a pleasure. Thanks to Chris Best. But why don't you tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah, that's right. Below, you can check out my link tree, Chris Parrish. You can also see that I'm affiliated and sponsored by Beardcade YEG, located on 105 482nd Ave, locally in Edmonton, Alberta. If you're in the Edmonton area and you want to check out any AEW, WWE pay-per-views, PLEs, make sure you're checking out Beardcade YEG to do so. You can follow them on X, on Instagram, and as well, you can also just go there. Why not? They're also on Facebook, so like them as well. You can check out my link tree. The 5 platforms of doom may change that wording with what's going on in the world. I'm not too sure yet. Might just blow over. I don't know. But please do that. You can check me next with a run-in on Monday Night Raw tomorrow with the Raw Patrol, where you can check out the final qualifying matches for the semifinals for the King and Queen of the Ring tournament, where we do see Cody Rhodes taking on Jey Uso and Roxanne Perez taking on Jade Cargill. So you don't want to miss this. So come check that out. That is going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So that's all on the Turnbuckle Studios app. So come check that out.
So since he was here for the majority of the show, I do want to shout out our friend Chris Best, and you can find him at his link tree, linktr.ee/Chris_Best83. And you can catch him tomorrow night with the Raw Patrol at 8 p.m. I also want to shout out the founder of the Boar's Nest, Bubba Duke, and you can find him online with YouTube at Bubba Duke Show and on Twitch at Boar's Nest with Bubba Duke. For myself, if you're looking for me socially, you can find me at my link tree, linktr.ee/OMD show, and you can catch me tomorrow night at 7 p.m. with the Locker Room Breakdown. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, from all of us here at the Boar's Nest and the Turnbuckle Affiliation Program, the world is better with you in it. Thank you, and good night.
Bubba Duke is here and plays his game. Look in a rock and take his fame. Loves to drive that General Lee every Sunday with OMD. Step up, he's ready for a fight, even when he has an open mic night. Boyness is here, so don't you sweat, cause Bubba Duke and OMB are geared to own this set. So sit back and enjoy tonight's best, cause it's time to roar at Boar's Nest. Bubba Duke is here and plays his game, looking to rock and take his fame. Loves to drive that General Lee every Sunday with OMD. Step up, he's ready for a fight, even when he has an open mic night.